You don't think Mayor Adams is corrupt?
Oh, no, I definitely do.
Okay, so
but, like, that's not a
You
conviction.
agree that Mayor Adams is corrupt, and you're saying that when the Justice Department comes out and says, hey, we're doing this so he plays ball with us on immigration, you're saying you don't believe them. It's not even denied that at least one of the major rationales is for immigration policy. They had an agreement, we're not going to attack American troops, and we'll withdraw on this timetable.
And they
that's what
attacked
occurred.
American troops, so you shouldn't have withdrawn on that timetable.
Wait, the Taliban attacked American troops when?
They blew them up at the base. 13, I believe, Marines died.
He thinks it was the Taliban.
Was Al Qaeda?
You don't even know. It's ISIS. Does that matter? That distinction matter that they didn't break that agreement and it was ISIS? You totally f***ed that up because you have no clue.
To Pisco for his opening statement. Thank you very much, Pisco. The floor is all yours.
Thanks, James. How much time do we have?
5 minutes.
All right, sounds good. I'll put my timer on. So in 1973, Richard Nixon fired Elliot Richardson and the Deputy Attorney General because the subpoena that had been issued by the special counsel in the Watergate matter had been resisted by Richard Nixon. He didn't want it to be done. And it was considered one of the most profound constitutional crises in the history of the country. Nowadays, we don't even look twice at the scale of the corruption that Donald Trump has put our country in. It is an absolute disgrace that we have, for example, the sitting mayor of New York doing a corrupt quid pro quo, a political quid pro quo, to do political favors for the sitting commander-in-chief in exchange for his personal freedom. I don't hear Sean to defend the mayor in terms of his corruption. Sean will acknowledge that Mayor Adams is corrupt, and yet Sean is quite all right, quite fine with, or apparently willing to say that it's not corrupt, or that that this corruption should be overlooked in favor of some political preference. It is absolutely scandalous. The level of infiltration of the executive branch into the legislative prerogatives, deleting wholesale agencies like the CFPB, deleting U.S. aid that was statutorily approved. You might disagree, for example, with some of the funding decisions by your congresspeople, but those are congresspeople's decisions to make. Donald Trump's decision to completely halt all federal funding, all spending whatsoever. This is a infiltration. It is a attack on our Constitution, and nothing that Joe Biden did in his entire 4 years in office pales at all in comparison to what's going on there. They told us in their Project 2025 handbook what they were planning to do. What they want to do is centralize authority, and that's exactly what they're doing. They're doing illegal firings of inspectors general. They're doing illegal firings of independent agencies. And why? To make the functioning of the bureaucracy stop. What Donald Trump wants to do is make it so he determines what his money is spent on. He determines whether or not people are investigated politically. Joe Biden never, ever did anything like that. I am willing and happy to acknowledge certain actions that Joe Biden did that I do not agree with, that I've even called corrupt. I've called his pardoning of his own family corrupt. I'm willing to do that. But think about this. The sitting commander-in-chief, the President of the United States, let out 1,500 terrorist thugs who attacked our Capitol. Possibly the single most corrupt action taken by a president in the history of the Union. We have a president who supported these terrorists, these maniacs who attacked our congresspeople and tried to overthrow the election. Some indicted for and convicted of seditious conspiracy. And you guys think it's a joke. It's not a joke. These people tried to upend the constitutional order, and now he's put out his deniable thugs into the world. Some of them literally pedophiles who have been indicted recently. And what is this all for? What is the purpose? The purpose is to install a king. That's what he wants to be, and I'm warning you right now. He wants to be a king, and he wants to have the authorities of a king. You hear it in what he talks about. He just tweeted the other day, quoting polling, and you guys think it's a joke. He's turning our country into Hungary. Joe Biden never did anything like that. And if we want to go down the policies, I'm happy to do it. Happy to talk about, I'm a liberal. I'm going to put my, cards on the table. You guys know that. So I'm going to prefer Democratic policies over MAGA policies. But how has your life meaningfully improved at all in the time that Donald Trump has taken office? Have prices gone down? He promised on day one to make prices go down. He's a liar, because what he cares about is not efficiency. What Elon Musk cares about is not efficiency. What they care about is taking down this country's bureaucracy, taking down our agencies, and stopping Congress from doing its job and taking over. That's what he wants. And what's coming next is so predictable. He is gearing up for, as they all have done, and as the Chief Justice of the United States, someone who I disagree with a lot on, has warned about, he's going to defy the courts. That's what they're prepping for. And what are you guys going to do when he does? What are you going to do, Sean? Are you going to call for his impeachment when he defies a court openly? Basically, he's already violating court orders. There was a U.S. District Court out of Rhode Island where they acknowledged, yes, he violated the order, the plain text of the order, and where it was open and obvious, there was no excuse for it. And so that's what they're prepping for next. And these people are going to defend it all the way. They're going to make these absurd comparisons to Biden student loans, absurd comparisons to overreaches by the Obama administration. I'm not here for it. I'm here for the Republic, for the Constitution, and that's why Joe Biden's policies are incredibly better than Donald Trump's policy of corruption and centralization of authority.
Thank you very much for that opening, Pisco. We are going to kick it over to Sean for his opening as well. The floor is yours.
Can you guys hear me? Oh, okay, I got this. Okay, so I noticed in his opening statement, he didn't really talk about a lot of actual policies of the Biden administration. And the reason that he didn't do that is because there aren't really these great policies that you can point to talk about the successes of that administration. Under President Trump, under his first term, because we have not just the 20 days of him being in office or whatever amount of days he's been in office as of late, we have a whole first term. The median middle class income rose by $4,400. Now, the Heritage Foundation, which is very biased, will of course say it's $7,000. Some naysayers will say that it's $2,200. But according to a CBS report, which was trying to ding him because rich incomes went up faster, it was $4,400. That's everyday Americans being improved due to the economic policies of the Trump administration. The Biden administration, people lost $2,200 in income when it's adjusted for inflation. Obviously, when we talk about what the policies are and if they're better, the question should be better for who, and I think the who should be the American people, and in my opinion, that stat alone is one example of the economic policies being better for the American people. Now, as for Joe Biden, the idea that anybody's going to come up here and defend him when, especially you, who jumped on the bandwagon to force him off the ticket for another candidate, is ridiculous. Like, you didn't want this guy 3 months ago or however many months ago just before the election, and now you're turning around and trying to defend him, and you're throwing the same exact pre-election attacks against Trump. January 6th is what we heard about. The pardons of Trump's people. And by the way, I didn't support every pardon that Donald Trump issued. And yes, the Hunter Biden pardon is a bad pardon, but he also pardoned 2,500 other people that were supposedly nonviolent drug offenders. And included in these supposedly nonviolent drug offenders was a Adrian Peeler is a man who killed a state's witness who was 8 years old and his mother in order to prevent them from testifying against his brother, who was also a murderer. Biden pardoned him because some crappy left-wing organization said that he was a nonviolent drug offender because he was serving federal time for drugs, even though he had that conspiracy for murder on his state record. Adrian Peeler is so notorious in the state of Connecticut, he's the reason why they have a witness protection program. Biden set that man free. He will be out by July of this year, an unrepentant double murderer. I know that some of the January 6th defendants are bad guys. I would not have pardoned them. Trump had the sense to commute some of their sentences, which does not erase their felony conviction. But this guy was a double murderer, absolutely terrible. And yeah, there's a lot of bad pardons under the Biden administration I can get into. But again, in terms of policies, the Trump administration was a deregulatory administration, which frees up the economy for people to engage, make choices for themselves. And we saw the results in that in his first term. As far as his second term, he's dinging him for prices not coming down in under a month. I mean, this is a guy who denied, deflected, went along with the Democratic narrative that inflation was transitory, was telling you that you were wrong because you felt like the economy was getting worse under Biden, which, by the way, now they've come out and admit that the American people were right and the supposed data was wrong. This was in Politico, one of Clinton's comptrollers. So yeah, this guy, Biden, again, he was so bad, they literally threw him off the ticket in a nearly unprecedented move. And Donald Trump was so good that after experiencing Biden, people voted for him back into office. They were like, you know what? We're going to get back with our ex-girlfriend. That's Donald Trump. He cooks a little bit better. And that's where we're at right now.
Thank you very much for that opening as well. We'll bring it right into the open dialogue, gentlemen. The floor is all yours.
Will you condemn the corrupt quid pro quo of Mayor Adams and the Trump Justice Department on the stage, yes or no?
Yeah, so I'm not a
Yes
fan.
or no?
I'm not a fan of Mayor Eric Adams. I never supported Mayor Eric Adams. I know this is your big get, like that
Will you
tweeted
condemn
out
it?
about. Let me answer the question.
Yeah.
So I would have pursued the corruption charges against Mayor Eric Adams 100%. I do think he's guilty, but unfortunately, I read some of the rationale for postponing this past the election, and even though you're trying to frame it as a corrupt quid pro quo, it turns out that there's a little bit of an issue in that the state's attorney, Damian Williams, is actually using this, or was supposedly
State's
using
attorney?
this the district attorney for the Southern District of New York was actually using the Adams prosecution, which his office filed, as a way to run for mayor of New York City. So this is the
Bullshit
concern
propaganda
about.
by that administration. Do you condemn it
I mean,
or not? Do you condemn it?
You can
Do you
go-
condemn it?
You can go to Damian.
Do you condemn the
You can
quid pro
go to
quo?
DamianWilliamsOfficial.com and see his very much not a campaign website.
Are you
wink,
willing to
wink.
condemn
And this is the
the quid
problem.
pro
So
quo or
yeah,
not?
I definitely disagree with them postponing
Do you
it for Eric
condemn
Adams.
it as corrupt?
Well, I don't believe it's corrupt.
You don't believe it's corrupt? Okay, so you don't think that they were doing it in exchange for immigration policies?
I don't think so. No.
You believe?
I think
you
they're
believe
trying to make it
a stooge of the
I think they're
administration.
trying to make something seem. I think they're doing something that I hate in American politics, which they found this guy who's going to run for mayor against Mayor Eric Adams was one of the architects of this prosecution. I think the case is solid, good, and should be pursued.
Look
But
at
in
how
order
insane this
to
is.
avoid the perception
yeah.
of this being political and biased, they're going to postpone it because they have not dismissed the
Look
charges
at the
completely.
lengths that they'll go through to defend this corrupt administration. We have a corrupt Democratic politician. He acknowledges that he's corrupt, and
It's alleged. He's not convicted.
You don't think Mayor Adams is corrupt?
Oh no, I definitely do.
Okay, so
but that's not a
you
conviction.
agree that Mayor Adams is corrupt? That's correct, right?
Yeah, I think he is, but he's not
100%.
convicted.
Yeah. So we both agree that he's corrupt. And and you're saying that when the Justice Department comes out and says, "Hey, we're doing this so he plays ball with us on immigration," you're saying you don't believe them.
That's not exactly what they said.
Give me a break.
In the memo.
So Tom Hallman comes on on Fox News and says we have an agreement. And by the way, the acting U.S. attorney, not a district attorney, the acting U.S. attorney of the Southern District of New York said this was a quid pro quo. She points to the conversation. It's not even denied that at least one of the major rationales is for immigration policy. And you're sitting here and you're accepting some bullshit post hoc narrative about a website from the U.S. attorney at the time who had no influence on this investigation whatsoever, and you have no evidence of that, and you're willing to say that this exchange is not corrupt.
I mean, he had no influence except for the fact that he's campaigning and showing himself at the press conference where they're announcing the indictments. But okay.
Just to be clear, so you're buying the narrative that this entire thing was a witch hunt.
No, I didn't say it was a witch hunt.
Was it
I said
a
the
corrupt
exact
investigation?
opposite.
Was it?
I said the exact opposite.
Was it a
Are
corrupt
you-
investigation or
Is
not?
English not your first
Was it a
language?
corrupt investigation or not?
I don't think it was a corrupt investigation. I think it is legit
Okay, so
to go after
to be
Mayor
clear,
Eric Adams.
to be
I
clear,
disagree with the Trump administration.
It was
on
not
this.
a corrupt investigation. It was not a corrupt investigation of a corrupt mayor who he thinks is guilty, and he's okay with a not corrupt investigation with Donald Trump. Why would you stop that investigation? Why would you stop that?
Well, they're worried about an appearance of corruption, which is what they're concerned about.
And you don't think that the appearance of corruption, of writing in your memo that, hey, we want you to play ball on immigration.
That's not what it said in the memo.
What about the appearance of a political statement on that? How about every Southern District of New York U.S. attorney in like the past, I don't know how many years, coming out and condemning it? How about the Friday night massacre we had there? You have nothing to say for that. You think that that's above board? You think it's not corrupt to drop this investigation? And by the way, they didn't drop it permanently. They dropped it temporarily. So if this is all the appearance of political bias, that's what he's worried about, why not drop it permanently? Why not pardon him if that's the reason? The reason why they kept it open and it's not done permanently with prejudice is because they want to hold it over his head, because they might indict him after, as they state, after the election, we might still indict you. They said, by the way, we didn't even look at the facts or law in this case in their own memo. And he's sitting here and telling you that's not corrupt. That's the lengths, and just so you know why this is relevant, that's the lengths people like this will go to defend the obvious, blatant corruption by the Trump administration.
Again,
He's
you're
sitting
just
here
asserting that it's corruption and monologuing about it. It could be corruption. It could be a problem. Again, I think Eric Adams is corrupt. I would have pursued the case. I understand the rationale that one of the guys who's the head of the Southern District of New York he's the one that is running for mayor or allegedly going to run for mayor against Mayor Eric Adams. He sets up a campaign website for cases that he has influence on, including the Adams case. Again, it's called, what's this guy's first name? DamianWilliamsOfficial.com. Anybody could look it up for himself. So I have an issue where you have an appearance of corruption from the Southern District of New York. I don't think that's legitimate. I would pursue the case, but you're asserting that it's a quid pro quo because they're saying they'll examine it after the election.
You're naive. You buy the regime's propaganda. So what they're doing, right? Like, if you're a prosecutor, one thing that prosecutors do is run for elected office. And one thing they do is like, hey, look at all this crime we stopped. That doesn't mean that just because we're, I'm showcasing the crimes I stopped. Just like, by the way, you had an issue with Alvin Bragg listing the different things that he's done as a public servant. Sorry, dude, that's campaigning. By the way, if Trump ran for office, he would also campaign on going after people and having big cases. That's just how our system works. And you're acting like that's corruption because you're a stooge. You're a stooge of the regime. And we can move on from it, but just look at what
Stooge of the regime.
I mean, you just said it's not a corrupt investigation. You think he's guilty.
Oh, I think
and because
Adam,
there's a website,
I think
he should drop the case, but only temporarily.
I think Mayor Eric Adams is corrupt. The website is just supporting evidence that the guy from the Southern District of New York is going to run for mayor of the city of New York. So yeah,
why do you discount the acting U.S. attorney? Why do you discount the line prosecutors?
Because I didn't say any of that. I said it looks like this guy's running for this position. So yeah, it's weird when your office indicts a guy before an election for a position that you intend to run for.
On balance, if you had to pick right now between this whole exchange being corrupt or not corrupt, on balance, would you say it's corrupt or not corrupt?
Which component?
Given the evidence that you've seen of the memo of the acting U.S. attorney, the memo of the line prosecutor who said this is corrupt, they can't even find someone from the integrity office to file the motion. And they have to put them all in a room and say, one of you motherfuckers sign this, because if you don't, you're all fired. And you're saying on balance that you're indifferent between the outcomes? That if this wasn't Joe Biden and the IRS whistleblowers, he wouldn't be screaming from the ledges saying, holy shit, look at this corruption. That we saw this shit, by the way. Every second, Joe Biden, there's some insider that says he whispered that he's upset with Merrick Garland, and these guys are screaming from the rooftops, interference, interference, interference. It's blatant in your face. You have no answer for it, and we can move on. But
I've already answered it.
All right, cool. So what about gutting all the agencies? So these are statutorily enacted agencies. The CFPB, just for an example, they say, we're going to delete it. Elon Musk's whim, a billionaire oligarch. You're okay with usurping the legislative authority. Is that right? They can put all their funding down to one on the president's unilateral discretion. Is that right?
So Elon Musk said that he wanted to delete the CFPB. They haven't done that yet. Again, they're examining it. They're auditing it. I remember somebody named Donald Trump who ran for president, and he said that they're going to set up this Department of Government Efficiency prior to him taking office. People like you were like, this is a joke agency. It's not real. Nothing to worry about. This isn't going to do anything. And now, because the talking points have changed, it's President Elon Musk. Oh, no, he's going after all this different spending and whatnot.
You're mischaracterizing what I said before. I've always said that Elon Musk is a dangerous influence on the president. You can look at my statements. You're just assuming shit. But just to be a trillion% clear, you think it would be acceptable if they reduce, for example, the CFPB funding to $1, or they fire all the employees in that agency because,
Well, the CFPB gets its funding from the Federal Reserve rather than from congressional appropriations, which is an issue onto itself. Like, that's an agency that essentially exists in a fourth branch of government.
If the CFPB, it's everyone fired, they close their offices and they use them for immigration detention, do you think that that's
use the offices for immigration detention?
So if it's you can fight the hypothetical.
Like they're going to put them in the
Federal
Reserve.
They've stated their desire to end the CFPB, to end the Department of Education.
You can have a desire to end the Republicans have been running on ending the Department of Education since the 1980s.
Do you think the president has the unilateral authority?
No, he doesn't have the unilateral authority to get rid of the Department of Education.
So why are they, for example, saying that they're going to do it? Why are they saying that we're going to delete it?
Elon Musk said he wanted to delete the CFPB.
And Trump didn't? Are you serious?
Trump may have said it, but Elon Musk is the one who said
he
that.
said
but
it.
They have not,
like you said, they
have not shut down the CFPB. If they fire the people there, anybody in the executive branch can be fired by the president.
So just to be clear, Elon Musk, who's the head of this agency, which you said, by the way, is a real agency with power, right?
No, I said your talking points changed, that it was a fake agency to a real agency.
Well, the question is whether or not it's an authorized agency, whether or not it's statutorily, properly enacted, and time will tell on that front. But he absolutely has effective control. You would agree Elon Musk has effective control over a shit ton of American policies. That's fair, right?
I don't think so.
You don't think Elon Musk... So what we're meant to believe, you do not think Elon Musk is having an effect on U.S. policy.
Right now, he's examining the government.
You don't think that Elon Musk is influencing, for example, how much money goes to a
See,
particular
now you're
agency?
like weaseling around
No,
the
no, no.
terms. You said effective control, and now you're
No, no, no.
influencing.
No,
There's a big difference, a giant valley between those two things. But of course, you're trying
does
to
he
use,
have a
you're trying to use
significant
your
influence?
weasel
Does-
tactics because again, you
Does he
can't
have significant
defend
influence?
any of the Biden policies.
We'll go
Notice
to
how
Biden.
all of this is like, oh, Elon Musk and the
Does he
CFPB.
have
Oh, Elon
significant-
Musk and the
does he have significant
USAID.
influence?
Oh, can they get rid
Does
of the
Elon
Department
have
of
significant influence?
Does he have influence over the president?
Of
Yes,
course,
he's
yes.
in the Oval Office.
All right,
Nobody
let's talk
said that.
Biden.
Again, you said control. You went from control to influence, and you
Let's
pretend
talk
like I
Biden.
don't notice that.
Can you point to a single thing that Biden did that was as corrupt as pardoning all the Jan Sixers? I'll wait.
Pardoning his son? What?
So you think that
Pardoning his son, pardoning federal government officials with a preemptive pardon that dates back 10 years, 3 years before any
you
of the
think it is-
offenses?
I just want to be clear. You think that it is more corrupt. It is more corrupt. I agree it's corrupt. You agree it's more corrupt to pardon Hunter Biden for his tax-related offenses, for all offenses.
For every
all
offense
I
for
agree
10
it's corrupt.
years,
Yeah, for
including
2014.
offenses unknown?
Then to pardon the Proud Boys and Oath Keepers that committed and were convicted of seditious conspiracy.
So some of those
I just
people,
want to hear
like,
you say
some
that.
of those people
I want
like
to hear you
Stuart-
say that.
Some of those people like Stuart Rose had their convictions commuted.
Do you think that
Like,
it's
they
more,
weren't actually
is it
pardoned.
more corrupt to pardon Hunter Biden than to commute
Yes,
Stuart Rose?
100%. Your own family?
So this is a guy who
Yes.
actually planned violence. It was proved beyond a reasonable doubt to overthrow the government. And he's saying that it's more corrupt to pardon your son, which is corrupt, than the people who tried to overturn the 2020 election. That shows you he's not serious about constitutional republicanism. He's not serious about democracy. Anyone who can sit and say that with a straight face is fucking lying. And to say that everyone, 1,500 people, how do you defend that?
1,500 people? Yeah, he pardoned 1,500 people. Joe Biden pardoned 2,500 people in a list that was given to him by an organization, including murderers that were told to him to be nonviolent drug
And by your
offenders.
own retelling-
Is the raw number of those people?
By your
like,
own
is
retelling,
that the issue?
By your own retelling, he was lied to by a leftist group, in which case it'd certainly be less.
Well, they gave him that list, and then he
Yeah,
put
so
out the
if
talking
he's just
points.
if he's just an idiot and going off the leftist
I mean,
list,
Trump
as you're
campaign-
suggesting,
Trump campaigned on pardoning and commuting the January 6ers. The American people voted for him, and he enacted those promises. Again,
Trump
day
also
one
banned
of
being
the
a
Trump
dictator on day one.
presidency- Day one of the Trump presidency, something that people don't usually see for their politicians. He had an hour-long session where he was going over all the different orders that he was doing in order to show the American people that he was keeping to his word.
Oh, yeah, he
Joe
looked like he
Biden
really
couldn't
knows
talk
orders.
for 5 minutes. And again, notice the lack of defense of any of Joe Biden's policies from this man right here.
Let's go
It's all
after them. Yeah,
orange man bad,
let's-
Trump
let's-
bad, Trump bad.
So let's
January
talk about the
6th.
policies
Where
of
were
Joe
you on
Biden.
January 6th?
So-
do you have an alibi? That's all he's got.
So Joe Biden, 100%. So immediately, instead of focusing on centralizing executive authority, Joe Biden was going after bipartisan legislative wins. Bipartisan legislative wins that were voted on by Republicans as well. Not the American Rescue Plan, but the Bipartisan Infrastructure Act, the Inflation Reduction Act, the Chips and Science Act. These are pieces of legislation that invested and protected the American worker, that invested in our economy. Bipartisan gun legislation, where even if you're a Second Amendment person, these are to stop domestic abusers from getting access to guns and things like that. So we can talk about legislative wins that he pursued honorably, as the president should. And yeah, I mean, what legislation are we waiting for Trump? We're waiting for massive tax cuts, and he wants to defund Medicaid. They're telling you he wants to defund Medicaid. He wants to increase the military budget. Are you like a war hawk now? By $150 billion. How is that responsible? How is that good policy?
The military budget goes up under every administration, number one. Number two, the tax cuts put money back in the American people's pockets, and the proof is in the results of the economic policies. Again, incomes for ordinary people went up $4,400. Under Biden and all those investments in the American economy, what did we get? A decline in your income adjusted for
Classic
inflation
correlation causation.
by $2,200.
Classic. I mean,
And in addition to that, like these programs like the Inflation Reduction Act, which was really about climate change, you can look at all the different ridiculous programs that they've done under the guise of climate change. I mean, I just did a story about Maine where they were gifted 4 electric school buses in a school district from a company called Lions Energy. Now, these buses catch fire, they break down. One of them stalled twice en route to pick up the kids. And this guy, who's the driver of this bus, had to veer off into a snowbank in order to prevent himself from crashing into an intersection. So that was given through an EPA program. And by the way, this is one of the reasons why they're trying to examine all these different various grants under the Biden administration. And there were free buses under the condition that the school district had to run them for 5 years. Problem is, they didn't work. They sent them back to the manufacturer. Manufacturer, again, a Canadian company, Lions Energy. They say that they're fixed, return them back to the school, and they're still broken. They're still busted. And now these school districts across the country are stuck due to this ridiculous environmental program. Another ridiculous environmental program from the Biden administration. Again, the bipartisan Inflation Reduction Act, that's actually a climate change bill, is building an electric car charging network around the country. Now, we're only a few years into this program, but it had a full budget of $7.5 billion. And after 3 years, they built 8 of these stations.
It's a 10-year budget.
It shouldn't take
okay, but
10
that's the
years.
plan. You can say
but think about the
wait.
Think about the pace.
You can say
think
the
about
plan
the pace
sucks.
though.
You can say the plan
8
sucks.
in 2 years. Just think about that. So you get 40 after 10 years at that pace. That's horrible.
You can say the plan sucks, but you're acting as though it's not going according to plan. It's what they're trying to do: private-public partnerships, and not just work everything like fiat. Because we recognize that it's a complex system that we live in. But you talked about prices. I want to talk about that. So if prices don't come down in the next 4 years, are you going to call the policies of Donald Trump with respect to the economy a disaster?
Yeah, of course.
If they don't come down, do you expect the prices to come down?
He promised that prices would drop, and he said he was going to do things to help prices drop. So yeah, if
Inflation is up.
It's February.
Yeah, what I'm telling you is,
are you still using statistics from January?
No,
you know how they use the egg stat that
clear.
was like the price of eggs as of January 15th?
I want to be clear.
And they blame Trump.
So I just want to be clear. You should not expect your prices to decrease. You should not expect your prices to decrease. So we'll see you again in 2 years when prices have not decreased, and where Trump, by example, is talking about and edging for these massive tariff wars. You guys saw that, right? Where he's having these fake propaganda victories where nothing of any consequence happens. And so you should not expect those prices to come down. So I'm very, very looking forward to when you post that video in 2 years saying Trump's policies are a disaster because prices have not come down.
I think you can expect some of your energy prices to come down, and that will have some downstream effects on the economy.
Oh, really? You know one of the major providers for energy in the United States of America, exporters? Canada. And who right now, like, relations with Canada have never been worse. He's openly talking.
Once Canada is a province of the United States of America,
yeah,
we will have access to all of their oil.
It's a meme. It's a meme just because they think that this whole thing is a joke for them. It's about owning the liberals. So you have flippant comments like that where they're not taking it seriously. The expansionist vision of this administration, for example, talking about owning Gaza. What do you think about that?
Well,
and now Rubio's doubling down on it. So what do you think of that? You just think it's a posture. You just think it's fake.
Well, I do think it's a posture, or I hope it's a posture, because I don't want anything to do with Gaza. Now, Greenland, that is a vision for the future, and I'm definitely on board for Greenland.
Would you end NATO? Would you end NATO to take over Greenland?
And would I end NATO to take over Greenland?
Would you end America's involvement in NATO?
We want to buy Greenland.
Okay, Denmark says it's not for sale.
Well, that's where you start the negotiation.
Yeah, okay, but what about Gaza? Let's talk.
Yeah,
about
I don't want Gaza.
Benjamin Netanyahu has, you would agree, a tremendous influence on Donald Trump. Fair?
Yeah, or does he control him or influence him? Because you seem to think that those words are interchangeable.
Well, no,
at times.
So just to be clear, I said that Elon Musk has effective control over a lot of policies, which he does. Fair?
No, influence.
He doesn't have control?
Influence.
So, okay, explain that to me. So if someone is able to
he's a special government employee. He serves at the discretion of the president.
He has effective control over a lot of stuff, right?
I don't think so, no.
Not even effective control?
No, because Congress is going to have to examine the things that he's doing, especially with these departments that are authorized by Congress.
You think that Joe Biden's like senile, all his handlers, you think that they didn't have effective control?
I know Joe Biden was the president of the United States of America and the Democratic Congress.
That's the bullshit that you'll get into where
it's not
you can't even use the word effective.
You're the one who's
going
to get to the semantics. As soon as we argue on control, again, to just rewind the tape, he then switches to influence, right? So he's doing is a Mott and Bailey. So he goes out on the strong position, and then when I push back on it, he retreats to a weaker one. This is the tactics that he's trying to go with.
The term is effective control.
Yeah, and I said no. I disagree. I don't buy into your premise. I'm not on board with this.
So
how can I say this more clearly so you stop asking the same question?
Yes. So why does he not
say he has influence.
Does the Secretary of State have effective control over State Department policy?
Yeah, the Secretary of what you call it, Secretary of State has influence.
Why?
I'm sorry, has control over a policy.
No,
Sure.
does he have effective control of the policy?
I think the Secretary of State has control over
Effective
the policy.
control, does he?
Yeah, effective
Okay,
control.
why does the Secretary of State have effective control over state foreign policy?
The Secretary of State is a confirmed nominee to that particular office. I forget what position they are in the line of succession in the government.
He serves at the pleasure of the president, just like Elon Musk.
The Secretary of State is a cabinet-level department, again, doing duties that are authorized by Congress. Elon Musk is a special government employee that can only work for 130 days in a 365-day period. What are you talking about?
So what we're talking
You think
about,
a cabinet-level
so
department in the line of succession is the same as a special government employee?
The truth is what you're doing is because the president is ultimately the supervising authority over, I guess in your mind, every single employee in the executive branch.
Well, that is true. He is the head of the executive branch.
I'm not even willing.
It's not in my mind.
I'm not even
willing to say that. Article 2 of the
Constitution. I'm not even willing to say where in Article 2 of the Constitution does it say the president
is the head of the executive branch.
It says there's a vesting clause, but where in the Article 2 does it specifically lay that out?
Where in the Constitution does it say that they can create something in the executive branch that's above the president?
Well, there's binding Supreme Court precedent on that. It's called Humphrey's Executor, and there's another one recently by Roberts called Saylor Law. You're aware of those precedents, fair?
No.
You're not aware of the precedents on unitary executive theory and on executives who are not immediately fireable by the president. You're not aware of that, but you're talking about it as though it's a foregone conclusion that Article 2 of the Constitution works the way you think it is, because you're talking out of your ass because you've never actually read these cases or have dealt with the arguments.
I don't know the two
legal
specific
arguments.
cases that you're referring to, but yeah.
They're the most famous cases. Humphrey's Executor is the most, and they're talking about overturning it. But you're willing to say on here that it's so obvious that the president can fire anyone he wants in the administration.
The president should be able.
The premise that Trump wants you to have. He wants you to think that everything's under his thumb. That's why he's firing illegally all of these protected offices. That's why he's firing, for example, the heads of the FEC or the heads of the EEOC. He wants these agencies and independent agencies to stop functioning.
They're not independent agencies. They're under the executive branch. Like, this idea that there's these independent agencies is just not real. Again, the president is the head of the executive branch.
In what sense is it not
and
real?
Even the inspector generals that you brought up in the open, like, did you explain what is supposedly illegal about their firing? He's supposed to give them 30 days notice that he's firing an inspector general.
And a substantive rationale. But listen, those notice provisions are important. Why are they important? The notice provisions are put there for a reason, to prevent these kinds of situations where the president of the United States is, at the drop of a hat, firing the people who are responsible for internal compliance, firing the people who are responsible for being a check on its own branch. And so violating that 30-day notice provision is extremely important because it's Trump trying to usurp the limitations that Congress has put in the law. The Congress has said you may only fire these people for such and such reason and after 30 days notice to Congress, just like he's flagrantly flouting the Impoundment Act on these spending freezes. What he wants to do is take away power from Congress, which has delegated some authority to the president on conditions. They say, yes, you can impound certain funds, but only through these procedures, only this amount of time. Yes, you can fire these people, but only through these procedures. And when you say, we haven't even hit the
limits of the Impoundment Control Act. It's something like 45 legislative days.
They're full on talking about. So first of all, in order to be in compliance with the Impoundment Act, you need to send a special message to Congress. Is the Impoundment Act being followed, yes or no?
Well, I don't believe the Impoundment Act is constitutional. Prior to the Impoundment Act, it was expected that the president would trim back the funds if it was appropriate in such a way that Congress gave a cap. And in the U.S. aid legislation, which I actually have it written down right here, it's called Senate Bill 2438. You see multiple different authorizations, which is up to a certain amount or as is necessary to perform the function. So you actually do have the authority under the previous system to trim back those funds up again, as long as you're accomplishing the necessary mission.
So listen to what he just said. The Impoundment Act is unconstitutional. So what he
the Impoundment Control Act, yeah.
So what he's suggesting to you is that it would be constitutional for the president to stop any appropriation passed by Congress.
I didn't say that.
Okay, so do you think that Trump has the power right now to stop any funding he wants for an indefinite period of time?
I didn't say that.
Do you think he has the power?
I said if Congress appropriates money on a maximum cap, like you are to spend, like the classic example that goes back to Washington is if you were to authorize the president to purchase, 10 gunships, and you gave them back in the day would be like $20,000, and the president can get that for $15,000, then he does not have to spend the maximum authorized by Congress.
Does the
this
president
is the theory
have the
that
authority to stop any amount
under
of
the
appropriation?
circumstances that I just laid out, where there's
but
a maximum spend amount, if you can accomplish it for less money, then yes.
So wait. So I want to be 100% clear. So the Department of Education has been appropriated funds by Congress. Agreed?
Okay.
So could Trump, if he wanted to, under your theory of executive power, halt, only put in $1 for the Department of Education and halt the rest of it for an indefinite period of time? Yes or no?
First of all, it's what did I just say? If the legislation offers a maximum cap for appropriations, then the president can go under it.
It's appropriating a specific amount of money. I'm asking you that question.
If it's appropriating a specific amount of money, then no, the president wouldn't be able to just get rid of it altogether.
So should he have to? So then, if that's the case, what can Congress effectively do about it if he decides I'm going to pause it?
Well, he can pause funds like temporarily under the Impoundment Control
No, but you
Act.
said that that's unconstitutional.
Yeah,
so
I think
your
it's
vision.
unconstitutional. Yeah.
So what could Congress constitutionally do, because they can't pass a law?
Well, they already had the legislation, so like that can be enforced, but we haven't even gotten to that 45-day period.
Enforced by whom?
We haven't even gotten to that 45-day period. Then you would go to the courts.
So the 45-day period is constitutional, but not the notice provision?
Oh, my God. The current law, regardless of what I think is constitutional or not, since you need it in clear English, says 45 legislative days.
Yep.
So we haven't even gotten to that point to even have this discussion about the Impoundment Control Act. After the 45 legislative days under the Impoundment Control Act, they can take the president to court.
So that is only for rescissions, not deferrals. And to be 100% clear, they have to have sent a special message to Congress, which you agree he did not do. Fair?
I don't know if he did.
He did. He sent an OMB memo.
You just asserted that.
Well, I want to represent. He, of course, did not send a special message because Trump believes, as actual Justice Warrior Sean does, that
that is my full government
the
name.
impoundment. So you can check it. People at home can check it. They can that they believe the Impoundment Act is unconstitutional. No one can argue that they're trying to follow the Impoundment Act. They are deliberately, just like they're deliberating or deliberately flouting the requirements of firing and notice on firing, they're deliberately flouting the congressional limitations on the Impoundment Act. And so it's such a pretense to sit here and think that they're complying when they're openly defying Congress. And what they're trying to do is what they're hoping for is that court orders will go their way. A lot of them won't. And what will happen is, just like they're gearing up for, they're going to defy court orders. And you're going to sit here and make apologies
because of this, Joe Biden's taxation policy is better. Again, notice how he can't actually argue the premise of the debate. And speaking of defiance of court orders, the Supreme Court of the United States of America struck down affirmative action. Under the Biden administration's Department of Education, they were advising universities as a way to do an end around the Supreme Court decision by telling them to stop looking for racial diversity and start doing these adversity scores. This is well documented from the Department of Education. Biden's he even had a little bit of a speech where he talked about how, the Supreme Court may have struck this down, but diversity is still our strength. Similar thing happened after student loan forgiveness was struck down by the courts. The Biden administration turned around and started expanding other relief programs. He even gave a speech where he said, the Supreme Court shut this down because the Republicans and the attorney generals ended up suing. And then what did he do? He expanded eligibility through the executive branch for a bunch of different programs to try to get some of this done and buck the Supreme Court in doing so.
Did you read Biden versus Nebraska or the affirmative action case?
Did I read the case? No.
Of course not. Because obviously those adversity type, you're laughing. It's completely true. He didn't read it. He doesn't know what's in it. He doesn't know if it's defying the court. And because the truth is, the court said you're allowed to consider adversity. You're allowed to that in a kind of generic or an essay that
they're
is talking about your
using
experience.
this in the Department of Education as a code for racial diversity.
The court said that was acceptable. So it's so laughable.
It's not acceptable when you're using it to subvert in order to get the same racial.
You haven't read the case, and you're telling them what's acceptable under the case. What a joker you are. And then obviously the student loan case completely, what does that have to do with what Biden did? What Biden did was initially tried to have a policy that affected, $10,000 for universally if you don't have a Pell Grant, $20,000 universally if you do have a Pell Grant. And that was striking at millions and millions and millions of people, very, very, very broad. And that was struck down. He never tried that shit again. He expanded so he did different things. He expanded
but you just went after
interest.
Trump, and in your opening statement you went after Trump for supposedly defying a Rhode Island judge. But the Trump administration's justification for that was that the OMB memo is what was rescinded as per the court's request. However, they had a different executive order that they were using to freeze specific funds, and they didn't believe that the court's decision on that one case, which was on that one order, expanded to all orders.
Yeah, so I want to
So
explain.
that was the legal theory.
I wanna
Like every legal theory from
Yeah.
the Biden administration is valid and good and honest and genuine. Every single one from the Trump administration is corrupt. And again, we're also not talking about economic policies or anything of the sort because you can't defend it. You talk about foreign
I'm happy to
policy.
defend it.
You were
Wait.
going after Trump over
Wait.
the Gaza thing. I think it makes
Let's move on.
sense.
Let's
I
move on to
think
where
it
you wanna
makes
go.
sense to actually posture strength on behalf of our allies rather than the wishy-washy nonsense where Biden's like, oh yeah,
So do
like
you agree
we're
with
going to
him coming out and
support
saying
the Israelis, but also we're going to like not give them the 2,000-pound bombs. We're going to freeze that temporarily. Like it's nonsense.
So
Either
you
you're
agree
in
with
with
him
your,
coming out and you agree with him coming out and saying America's going to own
I think
Gaza.
posturing that the Hamas
Yes or
terrorists.
no? You agree with him coming out and saying that? Fair.
Let me answer the question.
Okay.
I think that posturing that the Hamas terrorists might actually lose something they care about, like territory, as a consequence for their actions, rather than just get a ceasefire, a reset, and repeat, which is the standard in the Middle East, is a better strategy on a foreign policy stage than what was the status quo.
Do you agree with Trump coming out and saying America's going to own Gaza? Do you agree with him coming out and saying a yes or no?
I wish he wouldn't have said America was going to own Gaza because I don't want it, so I disagree with that.
Why would you disagree with it if it's just a smart posture?
I think do you not like hear the words that I say? You just
said-
imagine them.
You just said it was a smart thing to wait. You just said it was a smart thing to do.
I said
and then
it's
you
a
said you disagree
smart
with it.
posture to tell Hamas, this organization that is the governing authority in Gaza, that they're going to lose something for their actions. And in this case, it's territory. What I disagree with is I don't want Gaza. I don't want the Americans to say that they want Gaza. I would say I would have backed Israel. Like saying that they would take it rather than us because I don't want that problem. Now, do I even want the Israelis to take Gaza? In truth, probably not. It's not something that I care about. That's a foreign overseas conflict. But you posture on behalf of your allies. You go ride or die with them.
You agree? It was bad for Trump.
It
to
was
come out and
bad.
say-
Oh
Yeah.
my God.
Yeah.
It was bad for America to claim that they were going to own it because I don't want it. It's good to tell Hamas that they're going to lose something they care about because they don't care about their civilians, but they do care about their territory.
Yeah, but he
Because
didn't
when you
say
lose
that.
a war, you should feel like you're going to lose something, and that actually
Yeah, so
increases or decreases the chances that you will attack again. Because what happens in the Middle East? Hamas attacks, or whatever organization attacks. The Israelis strike back. International pressure goes on the Israelis. They initiate a ceasefire, and that never leads to peace. We just get rinse and repeat. And the reason why is that international pressure ends up lowering the consequences for initiating force against Israel, and that's why the cycle keeps going.
So why would you disagree with Trump's posture then? If Trump is saying that just as a posture and it's not really going to be implemented and you don't want them to be taken over anyway, why would you disagree with it and say it's bad?
For the reasons that I said, I want to say 2 times or 3 times. I don't know.
Well, you basically said you need to tell them that they're going to lose something.
Yes, lose territory, but I don't want
you can't
America
tell
to
them
have
that they're
Gaza.
gonna lose it all and give it to America. That distinction
Yeah,
matters to you.
yeah, it does matter to
Okay.
me.
Okay.
Yes.
Then it was
Yes,
a stupid
it does
policy.
matter to
I
me.
agree it was a stupid policy. I also I totally disagree with Trump being Benjamin Netanyahu's dog, which he goes around, pulls the seat out for him, and does anything that Bibi asks him to do. You know he's funded by a bunch of pro-Israeli donors, and let's just be clear about that. He is going to do what Israel commands him to do. Fair?
No, not necessarily.
Okay, so more so than Biden. Fair?
No, not
Do
necessarily.
you think that Biden is more beholden to Israel than
Well,
Trump is?
Biden actually received more money from AIPAC than any politician in American history.
That's not what I
so-
asked. So first of all, AIPAC is not all pro-Israeli funders. Fair?
AIPAC is not all pro-Israeli
Okay, so
funders.
then-
Are
so-
there anti-Israel people in the American-Israeli Political Action Committee?
I didn't say no. You said that Biden got more AIPAC dollars, and I'm telling you.
I got you. Like, all right,
No.
No, I understand what you're saying.
Trump
it's like
had,
all dogs.
Trump had
German
Adelson
Shepherds
dollars,
thing. I
fair?
get it.
I mean, and Biden didn't get that money. And so the really the question is, and I want to be clear on this because I don't think that you agree with Netanyahu's the amount of influence he has in America, right?
Yeah, I don't.
Right.
Like-
So why do you think that Biden is more beholden to Israel than Trump?
I don't think that I think both
equal?
parties in the American politics are influenced strongly by
It
Israel.
was a relative question. Who's more influenced?
I think Trump is more influenced by the Adelsons because he gets more money from the Adelsons.
So okay, they're both. You can't say who's more.
I think
influenced by
Trump
Israel.
is more pro-Israel than Biden.
Yeah, more influenced by Israel. Fair, and he's going to do what Israel wants.
I don't know necessarily. I don't know what this Gaza thing is.
Okay. I mean, they're signaling now.
I think Trump was more likely to signal that he's going to do what Israel wants, which I think is important.
Oh, really?
Posturing is
but
important.
let's look at the actual things that they did. They had the Abraham Accords. They recognized Jerusalem
That was
as the
good.
capital of Israel.
What a great mention of foreign policy victories for Trump. I mean,
you say-
negotiating peace with bilateral peace agreements with Arab neighbors. What was it, like the first time in 25 years that they got a peace agreement?
Yeah. You say that, but just to be clear, 100%. The question was who's more influenced by Israel, and Trump gave Israel tangible wins and victories. Fair,
Yeah,
and
you help your allies.
Some say, by the way, had a causative effect on that horrible attack. Obviously, Hamas bears complete and total responsibility for the atrocious acts that they did and the terrorism. And I hate Hamas, and so I'm not a supporter of Hamas at all. But people point to that as a causative effect. The Abraham Accords.
Yeah,
among
dumb
other actions.
people point to that as a causative
You don't think
effect.
it had an effect?
No, I don't. I think that if Hamas gets the opportunity to attack Israel, they do it. Like, I don't think negotiating these bilateral peace agreements made Hamas more violent. They were always a violent terrorist organization.
You don't think that it was
So
isolating the Iranian proxies, that it was isolating that Hamas in Iran in conjunction with Hezbollah wanted to take a one-up.
So you think
given
like
on the
Hamas was like sitting around and they were like, gosh, like us and the Israelis are good. Holy crap, they're getting these bilateral agreements. Now we really hate them. They always hated the Israelis. They were always attacking them. There's this
sitting here
dumb
thinking
theory of Israeli or Middle Eastern foreign policy that all peace has to start with the Palestinians. That's not true. The Trump administration ingeniously in his first term realized that it made way more sense to cut off the Palestinians from some of these people, some of these countries, and negotiate these bilateral agreements. And then maybe you'll get to a point where the Palestinians aren't being funded by all these different various groups. And I know a lot of the Shia groups like Hezbollah and all that through Iran are funding them now, but I think this is a much better strategy to negotiate
You support
these
cutting
deals.
off aid for Palestine.
What did I say that?
I'm asking.
Well, I don't want the American taxpayer to fund them.
So you do support cutting off aid for Palestine?
I might do some humanitarian aid. They whole territory got blown up.
I mean, they paused all foreign aid.
Well, I mean, they're in the middle of a war. You said end it altogether.
But I mean, so I just want to be clear in terms of the humanitarian aid. It sounds like you're in favor of it. Do you agree with the pause on all U.S. aid except for Israel and Egypt?
Yeah. We haven't paused Ukraine. Actually, we're still supporting them. So I wouldn't cut off an ally in a war.
Okay, so you would be in favor, for example, of Ukraine and America continuing to have a relationship and not taking money away from Ukraine, which is what the Republicans in Congress want to do next.
I mean, they're saying that they want to do that, or Trump campaigned on doing that, but that's not what's been the effect. And speaking of Ukraine, another genius Biden foreign policy blunder was reducing lethal aid to Ukraine as the Russians were amassing troops in Crimea, which he was doing, and I believe it was June of 2021. Trump actually, during his first administration, was increasing lethal aid to points that the previous Obama administration, which is not relevant to this particular conversation because we're doing Trump versus Biden. Again, you should start defending Joe Biden anytime
Trump
now.
does something right.
And Biden was reducing it because every president, and this is really unfortunate, and by the way, Trump did a little bit of this in his first term, has this idea that you could do a Russian reset. It's one of the dumbest conventional wisdom things in American foreign policy, and I just can't stand it. So yeah, we ended up reducing as a country under Biden administration aid to Ukraine, lethal aid, prior to their invasion, which again signals weakness, and that's what I'm against. Now, ideally, would I want to reduce funding to Israel? 100%. Ukraine? 100%. Over time, but you don't do that during a war because you have to think about the broader game. You don't want the Chinese to be incentivized to go for Taiwan. So you have to put up a strong front in these regards with our known allies, even though it sucks and I don't like our money going out the door, in order to deter us from getting involved in future conflicts.
On the Ukraine stuff, I'm man enough to admit when Trump gets something right. When Trump gave lethal aid to the Ukrainians, I think that is correct, that he was the first president to give lethal aid in that context. And yeah, he was right for doing that. But if you look at the body of these two people's work, it's obvious that Biden is way more pro-Ukraine. I'm not aware of the line item that you're referencing right now with the specific lethal aid given prior to the invasion. What they do is they'll cherry pick the specific line item that makes them out to be bad. But what's going on now is obviously, and as Ukraine is signaling, they're cutting Ukraine out, and they're signaling that they want to take away funding from Ukraine. And I don't know where you say, if you're worried about China, for example, why are you giving all of these, developing countries incentives to go into Beijing's arms by cutting off all their U.S. aid? Why are you signaling that America is an untrustworthy ally by, like, in the middle, like, talk about efficiency, at a drop of a hat, all the funding gets cut off. We have boats that are supposed to be leaving with food, and they're all rotting on their boats. How is that a good idea? How does that not embolden and strengthen China and Russia?
Well, for the Chinese, yes, there is the chance that some of the cuts from U.S. aid could create a vacuum for the Chinese. But, like, right now we're in a pause. We're reviewing this stuff. And I do believe a lot of times some of our foreign aid is counterproductive. And again, to be clear, under our democratic system, people voted for this for the Trump administration. As far as subverting China, this is what the whole Panama Canal drama was all about, because there's a Chinese company, technically it's a Hong Kong-based company, but since China took Hong Kong in Trump's first term, that has positions on both sides of the canal, and we're trying to put pressure on the nation of Panama, again, to get them out of our backyard, American foreign policy that dates all the way back to the Monroe Doctrine, so that they can't potentially block off the canal. So, yeah, we are trying to subvert China. We're also trying to re-examine the programs that we have in places like U.S. aid, and there's not everything that they're doing that I'm going to absolutely love. Like, I am going to be against certain things that are strategically valuable for the United States of America. But we don't know if U.S. aid, because none of us, let's be real, were talking about U.S. aid 3 weeks ago or 2 months ago. Really, we don't know how effective any of these programs are, so it's fine to review them, in my opinion.
Freeze them all, completely review them while they're being frozen. Why not just review them and then freeze them as needed? But also, by the way, I think Congress should have to do it. But let's be clear, you're fearful
Congress would have to
I think that's
put
right.
the final nail in the coffin for U.S. aid.
Well, for you, I think there's like some discretion for the president to indefinitely suspend all kinds of spending.
I didn't say indefinitely.
Well, I'm just saying, that's what it sounds like. That you think that the only limits
That's what it sounds like in your head, because
yeah,
you're making
that's
things
what it sounds
up.
like
But,
based on the words you're saying, that the Impoundment Act is unconstitutional and Congress cannot create statutes to limit the president's discretion in that area.
You don't know the difference between influence and effective control. So, like,
bro, that's so weak. So to be clear, you're fearful of China's encroachment. So am I. That's why I think it's weird to have someone who has very strong financial ties to Beijing and China.
How come you didn't respond to any of my Middle Eastern points?
Well,
why are we off that?
Which ones do you want me to respond to?
What I said.
The ones related to
Gaza.
Israel-Palestine?
Yeah, I was defending the bilateral peace agreements, and you're saying no, Israel
You
shouldn't
just talked about
negotiate
China. I was
those.
responding to the last thing you said.
Okay.
Is that okay, or do you think that
Yeah,
you
no,
want me to
you
go back
go
to
ahead.
Israel-Palestine?
I just thought you were glossing over it.
No, I think that Trump's posture on Israel, Palestine. Listen, Biden's posture on Israel, Palestine was not perfect. I didn't like it. I thought it was far too deferential to Bibi Netanyahu. I do think that, but I think that Trump is worse in that respect. And I think that we agree that they have too much influence on American foreign policy. And so on that, I think that there's common agreement on that. So I don't know what the big deal is in the sense of acknowledging that Trump is worse with respect to Israeli influence. But what you're saying is the Abraham Accords, which established mutual recognition, which was de facto agreed. I mean, like they were trading, they had mutual interests, and that this formal signing, which some say incited tensions in the region, that it was worth the paper that it was written on. And you think that's a huge victory, fair?
I think that those bilateral agreements are good, and it also demonstrates that this theory in American foreign policy that has gone on for way too long, that the key to peace in the Middle East is to settle the Israeli-Palestinian issue, is just not true.
I mean, what does it look like now? It sounds like it's a big component of establishing peace in the Middle East right now. No. And Saudi Arabia says we're not going to establish diplomatic relations with Israel without a Palestinian state. So it sounds like
they were already working on this prior to the October 7th attack.
Saudi and Israeli relations.
Yeah.
But the Saudi position now is that
right now during the war.
So you think that they would have? I mean, if that's the
I
case,
do. I do think
right.
yes. If Trump would have won a second term, I do think they would have gotten the Abraham Accords signed with.
Is that
Saudi
so?
Arabia.
So you think that the invasion of Israel would not have happened under Trump's watch? What's your evidence for that?
You're talking about the Hamas attack?
Sorry, the Hamas attack into Israel.
No, I think that they would have continued the work on the Abraham Accords, and they would have gotten a deal. Like with Saudi Arabia, because that was something that the Trump administration was pushing for. But Biden promised a return to normalcy, and when he got into office, all of a sudden Middle Eastern policy returned to normal.
Do you think Hamas would have attacked?
I think Saudi Arabia would have recognized or would have. I'm sorry. I'm thinking Saudi Arabia would have become a party to the Abraham Accords if Trump won a second term. This is what I'm saying.
Hamas have
The
attacked?
October 7th attacks was in 2023, so we would have had 2021, 2022, and most of 2023. That's what I said.
Okay, I mean, let's listen. I think that
If-
Joe Biden was
whether or
not,
not-
Joe
whether or
Biden was
not-
not an enemy to Saudi Arabia. I don't know where you're getting that.
I didn't say he was
Okay,
an
I
enemy
mean,
to
Joe
Saudi
Biden
Arabia.
goes out and like shakes MBS's hand.
I
mean,
said that there's a different theory in Middle Eastern foreign policy under the Trump administration versus the Biden administration, and honestly, all administrations that preceded, that peace must start with the Palestinians. That was not Trump's theory.
the foreign policy
and that's why he
difference
got the Abraham
is,
Accords.
is Trump is transactional, and Trump is doing things for his personal interest and not for the nation's interest. So and so are the other cronies and oligarchs in his administration. So, for example, as I raised before, Elon Musk has direct financial ties with China. Why is he the one who's leading these audits? Why does it make sense for someone so conflicted to be? Isn't that by itself showing that this is a wrong process? The fact that he's heading it when he has so many deep ties to countries that could be, or also internal actors that could be affected by how the government is funded. Tesla, for example, SpaceX. You know, he's leading the NASA or quote unquote audit. How is that okay? How are you okay with that?
I mean, look, there are potential conflicts of interest, and as they arise, I think they should be addressed, and like he should be removed.
Should he be in
from
charge of those
specific
audits, yes or
issues.
no?
But in terms of NASA specifically, like Elon Musk has done more money to save
Should
NASA
Musk be in
than
charge
any
of
other
those
person
investigations?
than any in charge of the investigations.
The audits, whatever you're calling them.
The audits as pertains to
The
what?
spending freezes, the Doge activities, and the other spending freezes, and the audits that you're saying Doge is doing. Should Elon Musk be in charge of that? Yes or no?
Well, he's the special government employee.
Should
and
he be? Should he be in charge?
I think he should be in charge of it, and when conflicts of interest come up,
Have
they
they
should
come
be
up?
addressed.
Have the
well, I
Elon
mean,
conflict come up?
there was a fake one that came up, and the way that the Trump administration dealt with it, I actually think was quite admirable.
So you're talking
there was
about
a
you're talking
report
about the
from
fleet of-
Rachel Maddow.
So look at this, the Tesla vehicles, right?
Yeah, there was a report from them, and
So
they
he
actually
thinks it's
paused
not a
that
conflict of
contract.
interest. He thinks it's still not a conflict of interest because the acquisition happened under Biden. Is that fair?
No, the purchase order happened.
Happened under Biden.
I
fair?
don't, it hasn't been
And therefore,
delivered.
it's cleansed of its conflict of interest.
No, I didn't say that.
But think about that for 2 seconds, right? Elon Musk is deciding which programs and which expenditures get exemptions. And so whether or not the expenditure happened under Biden's watch or Trump's, Elon is in charge of whether that funding goes through. He's in charge of giving the exemption.
The Trump
And so-
administration
so
specifically
that
paused
piece-
that deal
that
that
is
was
a
the
perfect-
subject of a fake report that you bid into on
that-
social
no,
media,
that
and now you're
Tesla-
backing off of.
That Tesla fleet example is a perfect example of a conflict of interest. It's a pristine example
And
of a
they
conflict
froze
of
that
interest.
contract.
So, after it was brought to their attention, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but he should not be leading this, and the fact that you won't say it that he should not be leading it is crazy. I mean, this guy, there's so many connections between. He's a military contractor, and he's going to be in charge of all of the government, or at least, having significant influence, not in charge. Significant
they make
influence
recommendations.
on, that are having the force of law.
They make recommendations to the president again.
That he's accepting wholesale.
Well, I don't know.
And you're
about that.
pretending that it doesn't matter. You're pretending that it doesn't matter that
Look,
that
if
the head of
when
this
specific
agency is
conflicts are
terribly
identified,
conflicted.
they should be addressed. Yeah, he's a special government employee. Like a bunch of different special government
imagine
employees
if George
have.
Soros. Imagine if anyone.
George Soros does have
okay,
huge influence. I mean, you
imagine
brought
if-
up Alvin Bragg. He paid for his political campaign.
Imagine if Rachel Maddow, because Elon is also a media figure. Imagine if Rachel Maddow was in charge of the audits that were happening under a government watchdog. How these people would cry pathetically every week.
Oh, they would put an anchor actor in
you don't
charge
think-
of it,
you
like
don't,
with
you don't
no.
think that it's a problem to have someone like Elon Musk either for the optics of impartiality? Before you said, yeah, we had to stop this prosecution of Bragg for the optics.
I didn't
of
say we
political
had
thing.
to. I said I wouldn't have, but I understand the optics and like this idea of what you call it, trying to appear not political.
So you're saying you wouldn't? So you said, for example, you wouldn't have stopped the case against Alvin Bragg.
No, I'm
Would
sorry,
you have
Eric
appointed?
Adams.
Would you have Mayor Adams? Would you have appointed Elon Musk to head this Doge?
Yeah, the whole department is his idea, or the agency, or whatever.
Given the appearance of a conflict of interest that was sufficient in your mind to understand at least what's going on with Mayor Adams, why would he be the person you appoint to head this?
Because the agency was his brainchild, and you need somebody to run it.
So having
And
audits
he's
was
good
his
at downsizing. Look at what he's done with his company. He's good at downsizing. That's the goal.
I mean, this
of
is where
the-
we're at, folks. I mean, there is no conflict of interest to corrupt, no obvious blatant hypocrisy happening in front of you that they will not defend and go to the mat defending. I mean, think about it. What could Elon do that would make you say, oh, he shouldn't be ahead of Doge? Like, what could he do?
There's plenty of things that he could do.
Name one.
I can't think of anything right now this second. I mean, he could grant himself like $100 billion contract out of nothing. I mean, there's there's plenty of things.
What if he hadn't granted that exemption to himself, or sorry, that hadn't frozen that $400 million or whatever $1 million of the Tesla fleet vehicles? If he hadn't done that, would you say, okay?
Well, he didn't freeze it. It was frozen by the Trump administration in response to the news reports.
So, by the way, I'm taking that representation. I don't know that it's frozen. I thought that was under the State Department, and I think a lot of the State Department stuff is not covered by some of the exemptions that they're applying. So I'm taking you on good faith that that stuff has been frozen. So I don't know that to be true.
Oh, good faith for once.
Yeah.
On $400 million.
I'm just saying, I don't know that to be true. But suppose that he hadn't frozen it. Would you say, okay?
I mean, that's a contract that was put out there for anybody to bid on. Elon Musk's Tesla was the only company that bid on it. But again, like, I would have frozen that on a different account, which is we don't need all of our State Department armored vehicles to be electric. I mean, this was the big red flag for when Rachel Maddow was reporting the story, that it was total nonsense. Because what administration is like, the armored security vehicles, those should be green and carbon neutral. These are obviously Democratic policies. So they should be frozen by Trump's executive order that you're against as it relates to EPA spending. Lee Zeldin should crack down on that nonsense.
No, if there's evidence of fraud and waste, you present it to Congress. It is not for the president to decide with his buddies, his rich, corrupt oligarch buddies, that he gets to say what's fraud, what's waste. It is Congress's discretion. If you don't want to talk about core executive power, core legislative authority to appropriate Congress, that is their key responsibility. The most important power that Congress has is controlling the purse strings, and you have no problem with them with it on whims or
Congress
or
still
with
controls
means.
the purse strings.
Oh, please.
And we're talking about like marginal parts of the budget, like 1% of the budget. It's like nothing right now.
The fact that
But
you stress,
like Congress will put out a budget of their priorities.
Do you realize what you
and
just did?
This audit will hopefully at least incentivize them when they put out that budget to cut off funding where it needs to be cut.
The fact that you acknowledge that these quote-unquote cuts, that they are cuts, is one, that's damning because you're not supposed to cut unless you go through the procedure of the Impoundment Act, which they're not going through. But the fact that you're acknowledging that it's marginal given the size of the overall budget should tell you what's going on here. They don't care about overall reduction in the deficit and the debt. What they care about is having this kind of signaling war, this meme war, talking to you guys, talking your ears off and trying to signal wins because they have policies they don't like. They don't like it when it goes to, trans daycares or whatever,
that stuff should be cut off
underwater
for sure.
basket weaving, that kind of shit. And so they know that you guys are like,
I mean,
clicking
you're
little
going to the
monsters
mat to
and you get
defend all
really-
this
and
stuff
you get
right
really
now.
upset about it. You get really upset when any money goes into a program that you don't agree with and you don't understand that Congress has this discretion. But notice, it is a small amount of the overall budget. And so what is this pretense that what they care about is a massive reduction if they're not even touching military spending? Military spending is set
They haven't got to military spending, and you'll be against it when they get to
the
that.
Republican. Donald Trump has said on the record that he is going to increase defense spending. Of course,
Donald Trump says a lot of things. He said that after the war's done, I want to have a sit down with Xi Jinping, Vladimir Putin, and say, let's cut our military budgets in half. That was a quote from him this week.
It's not just
You're
words.
like his statements. Like, the guy says a lot of things. We all know that.
It's
Again,
not-
can you defend the Biden administration? It's Biden versus Trump policies, and I'm waiting for the defense of Joe Biden.
Why don't you attack me on some? Hey, so we're going down the path. You wanted to talk about foreign policy. We went there. I want to finish this last word.
Yeah, and you
on the
said
budget.
like you didn't support a bunch of Biden's foreign policy. So where's the
I
defense of him?
I support him on Ukraine and being super pro-Ukraine way more than Trump is. I support Biden not isolating our allies and attacking them and making causing friction between them where they've already had effects, potentially inflationary effect, we don't know yet, on Canadian and Mexico trade. I don't agree with that. I don't agree with him going out and using and basically attacking Europe and prepping for huge, massive tariffs with Europe. So in that respect,
There's nothing that says you love your ally more than you want them to join your country as the next province. That's what Trump's offered Canada. That's beautiful.
There's nothing that says that you love your country more than agreeing to be annexed by your neighbor. That sounds like Putin. I mean, that's where we are right now. We're turning our country into Vladimir Putin. He doesn't talk about...
I know you have trouble listening, but I was saying there's nothing that says you love your ally more, as in from the U.S. perspective, than saying you want them in the country.
Than invading them
and then
and
he
take them over.
flips it to the Canadian perspective, and it's like, oh, they're going to say that they want to be annexed.
How about respecting,
When did I say
How about
that?
respecting the sovereignty of Canada?
You could still say you want Canada. We're not invading
Well, no, but
it.
so something about respecting your allies is like if they say, hey, we're Canada, we don't ever want to be America, or hey, we're part of Denmark, we don't want to be part of America.
Are you
respect
married?
that. Stop.
I'm just asking you.
Wait, that's not relevant, bro.
I'm asking you. Are you seeing someone?
I'm seeing someone, yeah.
Okay. I mean, sometimes you get a little rejection and, you got to ask them out again. You got to be more, you got to put in a little effort.
Bro, like what is this? How many times will they have to say no before he gets the picture? And will you continue to defend it when he's like calling for an invasion of Panama eventually, as he will?
No, he's already gotten the Chinese companies to They're going to end that contract with those companies.
So you don't think that they have any more aspirations in the Panama Canal?
I mean, we want to have not Chinese influence on the Panama Canal, but I don't think we're going to take it over again.
Okay. I mean, so just to be clear on where I stand on foreign policy, I think a lot of these are huge blunders. I think that it's absolutely...
You don't want Greenland?
I only want Greenland if Greenland wants to be part
No,
of America.
what do you want?
I want to respect Greenland's sovereignty and Denmark's sovereignty. I want to respect NATO as well.
But do you want Greenland, though?
Listen.
Would you be against the Louisiana Purchase? How
I'm
anti-American
gonna be
are you
based
going to
for a
go
second.
right
I'm going to
here?
be based for a second and say, listen, I am a big manifest destiny person. I love America, but I don't want to be an empire. I don't want to spread it where it doesn't want to be spread. And I think one of the biggest mistakes of the neocons who ran the Republican Party for a long time was, and who, by the way, are still in positions of high authority under this administration, Marco Rubio, Eli Stefanik, to say nothing of like Pete Hegseth, who was a major supporter of the Iraq War. It was this notion that we can just spread democracy using pressure all the time. And so I am fine with, in theory, if we're doing this in like political theory, Canada becoming an American state, go for it. I want Puerto Rico to become an American state. I love spreading our Constitution because I believe in that Constitution, but not with the sword and not through these kind of weird tricks or pressure. I think it's not okay and not acceptable right now. And I think that Biden did a good job stewarding our allies in support of major things that occurred. For example, the Ukraine war. He kept NATO together. He got a lot of European countries, for example, Germany.
He kept
and
Afghanistan's
others.
government a lot. Oh, wait, no.
You support the withdrawal of Afghanistan, don't you?
I mean, there's ways to leave and then there's ways to leave.
Do you support the withdrawal of Afghanistan, yes or no?
Did I want U.S. troops to eventually leave Afghanistan? Sure.
So
but we also had contractors in there that would have stayed probably under Trump's
What would you have done
policy.
differently? For example, I'll just give you an example. Trump said he would have kept Bagram Air Base in Afghanistan.
Trump said he would have killed the guy. He showed him a picture of his house. You never heard that story? If he killed one more person.
So Trump said he would have kept Bagram Air Base. Do you agree with Trump, yes or no?
I don't know.
You don't know. So what would you have done differently?
I would have, if they were, I wouldn't have left in the fighting season. I think timing it so that you withdraw near the 20th anniversary of 9/11. You say who timed it? Again, they had a procedure under the Trump administration, but there were conditions for that withdrawal that were not met by the Afghanis or not met by the Taliban.
Who timed it?
Biden did. He was the commander in chief.
Wait. So there was an agreement with the Taliban, a unilateral agreement, by the way, just like he's doing right now with Russia. Right now he's in negotiations with Russia without Ukraine there or Europe there. So he had an agreement edging out the Afghan government just with the Taliban. And they said they had an agreement. We're not going to attack American troops and we'll withdraw on this timetable. And
they
that's what
attacked
occurred.
American troops. So you shouldn't
no,
have withdrawn on that timetable.
Wait, the Taliban attacked American troops when?
They blew them up at the base. 13, I believe, Marines died.
He thinks it was the Taliban. Who was it?
Or was it Al-Qaeda?
You don't even know. It's ISIS.
Dramatic pause. Oh, ISIS, whatever.
Taliban. Wait, but that matters, right? Doesn't that matter? That distinction matter that they didn't break that agreement and it was ISIS? You totally f***ed that up because you have no clue. And you think that you guys all saw it. I mean, the Taliban did not, they kept their word. They didn't attack American troops.
They
Listen,
overthrew the
Taliban.
Afghani government.
What's that?
They overthrew the Afghani government, though.
Who? The Taliban?
The Taliban.
Yeah. You blame Biden for that?
I mean, we could have supported them with air power or something.
So I'm a loss. Do you want us to be more engaged and spend more money in foreign, and giving them more weapons and more arms, or do you not want
I
to do
don't
that?
want to create vacuums. I never put myself up
You're in a
here
fucking-
as an isolationist.
You're in this little Goldilocks position where no matter
No, I'm
what
not.
you do, you're criticizing. If they withdraw, it wasn't done enough. They should have been more support. But you also don't want to get too involved in Gaza. But you do want to support Israel, and you want to support your allies, and so you want to support Ukraine.
I said I don't want America to own Gaza. Like, okay. I clarified that so many times, and you're still misstating
But
it.
you agree with funding Israel, fair?
Yeah, you don't abandon your ally during a war.
Okay, but you also agree that we should have funded and spent more money and spent more resources in preventing the Afghan government's demise.
I mean, if we needed to stay to prevent them from collapsing so we don't show weakness on the world stage, then yes.
So, I mean, I don't know what to say. If you're in favor of establishing the Afghan government's legitimacy and making sure that it is stable and it survives, then the answer is don't leave.
I mean, we had contractors there under the Trump administration. You could get troops out and use contractors as a substitute in order to stabilize. Like, we left them with equipment that they couldn't use. And some of these people, like, again, I know everybody's like, oh, we don't care about conflicts around the world. Some of these people helped our troops while we were over there.
Yeah, and guess what? Trump just said, as part of his immigration policy, I was wondering why we're not bringing up immigration.
Let's talk about immigration.
Yeah. So, as part of his immigration policy, he's not going to let the people who helped us in Afghanistan through, like thousands of them.
Yeah, we should send them to do what we did similar, I believe it was in Vietnam, and send them to a third-party country while we vet them before they get here.
That's
I don't
nice.
know why this isn't a normal American
So you were
policy.
talking about,
but in terms of immigration, greatest immigration policy
ultimate
maybe
NIMBY.
in the last couple of decades.
The
remain
ultimate
in
NIMBY.
Mexico.
The ultimate NIMBY. So he wants us to assist Afghanistan, but not if it's going to cost us too much, and not if it's going to be in our. We don't want to take these fucking losers who helped us in the war. I mean, we wouldn't want to impose costs.
Well, we
on
have
ourselves.
to vet who they are. Like, again,
Yeah. So why we have a unilateral? Why do we just?
we would send them to a third-party country. And like you say that like it's a bad thing. I want to help our allies, but I don't want it to cost a lot. Yeah. That's exactly what I want to do.
What
not spend a ton of money that's unnecessary, number one. Number two, again, immigration policy.
Yeah, go for it.
Remain in Mexico. Best immigration policy I've seen in like the
How many migrants did it
in
affect?
the last
roughly?
10 years.
Roughly.
We have a bunch of people
Roughly
that
how many
were
migrants?
defrauding our asylum system, that were going through a bunch of different countries on their way to the United States of America to claim asylum at
Roughly
our border.
how many migrants do you think that policy affected? Give or take.
I don't know. 10 million.
Do you have any clue of the scale of Remain in Mexico? If you're saying it's a humongous, a great policy. That's
Well, it was
gonna-
instituted in 2029, and then we had 2019, and then we had the COVID emergency, so we were using Title 42 to force people out of the country.
I'm asking you whether
but
you
it
have an
should
idea
be
of scale.
expanded to more people that were
I'm
claiming
asking
asylum.
whether or not you have an idea of scale about how much this affected, whether or not it was significant, as you say. Do you have any idea of the scale? Of the
I know
amount
you're
of
going to say it's like tens of thousands maximum. Go.
It is tens of thousands.
Yeah,
That's
see?
good. Yeah, tens of thousands.
But again,
maximum.
it was instituted in 2019 prior to the COVID, where we ended up using Title 42 to expel people. It should have been maintained under the Biden administration, especially when they got rid of Title 42.
It's limited by what Mexico is willing to accept. And
Again, Remain in Mexico is also a principle. It's the idea that you have to apply for asylum in the countries that you pass along the way, because asylum is, I'm in fear of my life, and you should apply for asylum in the next country that you would be safe in, not your first choice for economic reasons.
As in statute, pursuant to bilateral treaties that the government can negotiate, and which they have done so with Canada, and safe third-party country agreements. And so, again, like, the nuances matter. In my opinion, statutes matter, procedure matters. But you like the policy because, it's at the whim of the president. It's something based, and you don't have to think about its legality or whether or not, we can even conceivably, be sending, millions of people to Mexico to remain in Mexico to have their asylum petition heard? It's not the case. Mexico's not going to accept it, and it was never going to be a cure for the policies that.
I actually don't mind if Mexico doesn't accept it. What I actually want them to do, and this is one of the goals, is to get them to stop facilitating all this illegal immigration through their country to the United States of America. Like, they know when they see the caravans of people headed for our border and it's being broadcast on the news where they're going, but for some reason our ally just allows them to do that. That's nonsense.
He just told you what this is about. It's a pretext.
It's a deterrent.
Yes,
I believe in deterrence. Yes.
So it's not about.
It's a good policy on its own, and it's a deterrent. Yes.
What he wants to do is stop processing asylum claims. Fair.
I want them to claim asylum in the next safe country as the program is intended.
Do you want to process asylum claims as they arrive or not?
No, not as they arrive. I want to change how they're arriving.
Yeah. So that's in this country, we pass these things called laws, and these things called laws. We're a country of laws, not of men. But at every turn, pro-Trump sycophants don't care about the law, that it says that you have to go through asylum procedures, that it says you have to provide hearings to certain people, that you have to have credible fear determinations of people who are,
Does everyone have a right to claim asylum in the United States of America?
You have to be at a
and
port of
pass
entry.
through. How many countries can you pass through to
No.
claim asylum here?
Do you know this answer, or are you asking it?
I'm asking you, how
don't
many
know.
countries?
Okay, so
In your great world.
so there's a distinction in the law. To apply for asylum, typically you have to be at a port of entry or inside the country. There's a different refugee resettlement program that applies the same terminology of refugee, but it's capped at certain amounts of people, in the hundreds of thousands. But just to be clear, we are forced under our own laws to provide procedures to people and to give asylum determinations.
How many countries
and
should somebody be able to pass through in order to claim asylum in the United States?
should ethically or should under the law?
I'm asking you, how many countries should people be able to pass through before they claim asylum at the United States? How many safe alternatives should they be able to ignore?
The answer is obviously it depends. It depends on a lot of different factors. So if they're all persecuting people and none of them are safe countries, an infinite amount. Fair? You would agree with that? Would you agree?
Yeah, if they're
Yes,
being
okay.
persecuted, you're supposed to go to the next safe country.
Okay, so then when you ask this kind of general question of like how many countries, with
I'm
removing
asking in your
context-
opinion because it is fraud when you pass through all these safe countries and then you come to the United States because you're an economic migrant and you're trying to get in through the asylum system. So how many countries before you think it's a bit suspicious? Is the answer 6?
So
is the answer 5? Is the answer 18?
If your question is how many of these are fraudulent asylum claims, and how can you
No,
tell
that's
that?
not my
wait,
question.
how can you tell?
How
that
many countries should you be able to pass through that are
I-
safe
I-
countries
it-
with asylum
so
laws
just to be clear,
on your way to the United States of
I want
America?
to be 100% clear. The answer is it depends. Why is the answer it depends? Why does that make you crazy? The answer is it depends because different claims of asylum are based on different well-founded fears of persecution. And so if I said to you 5, 6, 4, 3, that would be a much too broad answer because maybe there is well-founded fear of persecution of certain sexual minorities in 5 countries leading up to Mexico.
Okay.
But maybe there's not for racial.
How many
Maybe-
safe countries where you would not be persecuted, where they have asylum laws, should you be allowed to pass through on the way to the United States?
Pursuant to the law, I think that if you arrive in a safe country, you should be required to seek asylum in that country, pursuant to the laws as enacted by our Congress. But if it's actually the case, right, that you have someone that comes up and says, hey, those are not safe third-party countries because my asylum claim is whatever.
If they're not safe, that's not what my question applies to.
I understand, but people will take my statement. I have to clarify for the audience. People will take my statement to be far too broad. I agree that if there's a safe third country,
People will take my statement to your very specific question far too broad.
that's
Like
why
I asked
I'm
again,
clarifying.
if the country is safe, if whatever amount of countries that are safe that you can apply for asylum through,
you should
how
have to go
many of
through.
them should
Wait,
you actually
wait,
go through?
I just
or
answered.
be able to go through.
I just answered.
Because we see multiple people
just
coming
answered.
through all these different countries that they could apply for asylum on their way,
Asylum
but
is
they're
not a-
economic migrants, so they're coming and using the asylum system. By the way, this was encouraged by Joe Biden during the Democratic primaries. He said that he would immediately surge these people to the border because that's who we are. He said it during a Democratic primary debate on ABC. This was intentional policy by the Biden
yeah.
administration, and it was disastrous. And then
That's-
all these people get shipped around the country. And yes, his words have consequences because they immediately started surging when he was in office, when he lifted Title 42, which again was something that he promised to do. And guess what? We have to deal with that. We have to pay for that. And you won't even say a hard number that, yeah, you shouldn't be able to commit this obvious asylum fraud.
So wait. I just said if you pass through a safe country and if we're gods, right, and we're omniscient, we know that it's a safe third-party country, and we know that we already have
the
established.
qualifier is that you need
Wait,
all.
why are qualifiers
you
bad?
need to be
Why are
all-knowing.
qualifiers bad here? If it's a because
You said
I-
if we're gods, the standard is we're all knowing.
So if we know to a certainty, because asylum claims are made differently, you don't want to accept that. And you want to think that all asylees should be given the exact same treatment with respect to third countries. That's not the case. Fair? It's not the case.
If they're safe countries, they should apply for asylum there.
Agreed. So I did give you a direct answer to that. Fair?
No, you
Wait,
said
I
you
just
said
wait,
you said
did I
you
not
said we
say-
needed godly
Oh,
knowledge.
Wait. Did I not say that if we know to a certainty that there's a safe country intervening in the middle, pursuant to our laws, they should be forced to apply for asylum there? I did answer that, didn't I? Did I answer that?
So one country,
Wait, if there's a single third-party country in between and properly,
the
right,
first country.
if there's a single country, wait, I'm answering it, fair?
Yeah, single country.
Yeah, but the truth is, the truth matters. We don't have all of those bilateral treaties with those countries, so it has to be pursuant. Should we follow the law? Yes or no?
Why
Should we
would
follow the
we
law?
don't need a bilateral
Should
agreement
we
with the
follow
country.
the law?
We don't need a bilateral agreement with Colombia that when
Should
somebody
we
comes
follow
from
the law?
Venezuela through Colombia that they should apply for
Should we
asylum
follow the law?
in Colombia. Why are you mentioning bilateral
should-
treaties?
You don't. Have you read the INA?
Why are you mentioning
Have
bilateral
you read
treaties?
the Immigration Nationality Act?
Why are you
Have you
mentioning
read?
bilateral
do you know the?
treaties?
Do you know the Immigration Nationality Act?
Why are you mentioning bilateral treaties? I'm talking
'Cause
about
I've read the
somebody
INA.
from Venezuela who passes through Colombia, and now you're asking me something hyper specific, a very debate bro tactic. I got it. If you go through Venezuela and you're leaving because the socialist regime is collapsing and all that, and you intend to claim asylum in the United States of America, why are you not claiming it in Colombia? And why does the United States government need a bilateral treaty with either country for that person to apply for asylum in Colombia?
Where do you put them?
First stop over.
Wait, hey, so just to be clear, where do you put them?
If you need to flee oppression in Venezuela, you don't get your first ideal magical choice when
Where
you
do
apply
you
for
put
asylum.
them?
You go apply for asylum in the next country over. If you
where-
pass through Colombia,
wait.
you apply for asylum in Colombia.
Where do you put? Where do you throw? So they're at your country, fair? These people who.
Where do
Wait,
I
wait,
don't
wait,
care
wait,
where
wait,
Colombia
wait.
puts them.
Wait,
What are
wait
you
a second, no,
talking
no, no,
about?
No, where do you deport them?
I don't care where Colombia puts them when
No,
they go for.
where do you deport them?
What the are you talking
So
about?
if someone from Colombia comes to America claiming asylum and they've passed through a safe, in your mind, safe third-party country, and you think that they shouldn't have asylum, where should you throw them back?
You send them back to Colombia.
You understand that there are conventions against torture and withholding of asylum, which is different than granting of asylum, which prevents, by law, America from sending certain classes of who are not asylees under the law, but prevent our just giving forth all these people to the countries where they're being persecuted. You understand that?
Send them back.
So send them back in violation of the law?
Send them back.
Send
They're
them back.
economic
Wait.
migrants. When you commit
So
asylum fraud,
I just want to.
when you commit
I want to get a yes or
asylum
no.
fraud, you're violating our law.
So I want to get a yes or no. Do you think that they should be sent back to a country even
We
if it
should
fall-
deport
even
people
if it-
who commit
even if-
asylum fraud, for sure.
So should you send back asylees who claim asylum but went through third-party country, as the example we just put out, in violation of the law? Should we deport them?
We should deport people who commit asylum fraud.
Should we violate
Yes.
the law? Are you willing to say now that you would not endorse?
Asylum fraud is violating the law. If you commit asylum fraud, that's what I'm
America-
talking about. That's
America's-
what I'm describing.
America. I'm talking about America. Should America violate its own
America
law?
should deport people who commit
Should it-
asylum fraud.
Should the President of the United States
America
and the
should
Department of
deport
Homeland
people who
Security
commit
should
asylum
they
fraud.
violate immigration law? I'm asking you.
Claiming asylum fraudulently is a violation of our
So
immigration
would be
law.
so would be sending them back to a place against the Convention Against Torture.
So
fair?
we just keep them forever.
Wait,
under your-
I'm
under your
asking you a
opportunity,
question.
gentlemen.
Wait. I just want to ask a question. I want an answer to that question. Should the American government send
The
back
American
someone
government
against law?
should deport people who commit asylum
Should they
fraud.
violate the law in doing so?
I don't think it is a violation of the law.
Okay, if it is, assume
If
it
they
is.
committed asylum fraud, yeah, you should send
Yes.
them back.
So the answer, yes, you should violate the law.
no,
it-
if they violate the law, they should go back.
Wait, but I'm asking you, if the sending them back is itself also against the law, would you
Then you
break
have
the
two
law?
conflicting laws. It makes no sense.
It's not necessarily conflicting.
It is conflicting.
They're not conflicting. You don't grant them asylum. They don't have asylum is a pathway to a green card. All right, asylum is a specific thing. It doesn't mean what you think it means. Just being in the presence is not asylum in the country. My question for you is, so it's not conflicting. There's no conflict. My question is, would you violate the law
If you can't
and send them back?
to whatever country, then you can
That's not what I'm
imprison them,
asking
I
you
guess.
a specific
Like,
question.
I don't know.
I'm asking you a specific question. Would you
If
violate?
it's a direct violation of an existing law, then you have to change the law.
Would you violate the law? Is my question.
I just said you have to change it.
I
so
didn't
the
ask if
answer
you
to
have
that
to change it. I
question,
didn't ask you to change it. I asked,
the answer
would
to
you
that
violate it?
question would be no.
Okay,
I wouldn't
thank you.
violate the
Thank you.
law.
So
You
so
just
I'm
have
also
to,
in favor.
I guess you have to imprison them forever.
I'm also in favor of our government not violating the law. What you have with a lot of these people who haven't really read the law, don't understand it, is they lie to you and they don't know the law. They don't understand why things are the way they are. And if they took 2 seconds to look it up, they maybe would have a more well-informed audience when they make their bullshit videos. Are we good?
Juicy, to say the least. We'll jump into the Q&A. This has been so entertaining, and I'm sure the Q&A will be as well. Gentlemen, this has been so enjoyable. I don't know if I've enjoyed a debate in
You
this
asked
entire
for it.
conference as much as this one. So you can line up here, folks, in this left aisle, and then we'll just back up to that piece of tape right there, the black
You send
piece
them
of
to
tape.
Guantanamo Bay, obviously.
Oh, yeah, we didn't talk about that.
Very fun. So, thank you very much. What's your question?
My next question is for Pisco.
Hey.
So what can you maybe name a specific policy or a specific issue where Biden did better than Trump? Because I don't.
Yep.
Maybe I missed it, but
100%.
I feel like you did.
So the Bipartisan Infrastructure Act, I think, is a wonderful law that we're seeing the fruits of already in terms of in our states. You can follow the trackers of all the different projects that have been approved and some that are actually being done right now. I think also the Chips and Science Act is great, and I think investing domestically is wonderful. The NLRB was incredibly pro-labor under the Biden administration. I think that the FTC Commissioner, Lena Khan, was going after monopolies and was trying to prevent monopolistic pressures on prices, which was wonderful by the administration. I think that Biden's policies vis-a-vis Ukraine, I've already talked about, I think were excellent, and he stood by our allies. He rallied the allies on Ukraine. And so those are some examples. I can do more if you'd like.
So I agree. Some of those are good, but that equates to his policies being better than Trump's policies?
Yeah,
How is that
they're
so?
better because I think it's wrong, for example, to the contrast, right? So while Biden is empowering a lot of these agencies that are going after big billionaire oligarchs like the CFPB, Trump is gutting the CFPB. He's stopping these organizations from keeping the powerful to account. Whereas, the Biden administration is empowering someone like Lena Khan to take on the monopolies. Trump is, again, pushing forward people who are pro-monopoly, pro-oligarchy. So it's a complete night and day difference. It's going to have a profound effect on our lives. You're going to see prices go up. You just are. And so it's a delusion to think that he's going to have a negative pressure on price. And you're already seeing excuses starting. And so that's what's going to happen. I'm telling you now, so you're ready.
Inflation's a big issue. Do you think that's Trump's fault, Biden's fault, the Federal Reserve's fault? Question for both of you: where do you, if it was a pie, who gets the biggest wedge? Or you can throw Congress in there.
Yeah, I think it's a great question, and I'll throw it over to Sean after. I think the Federal Reserve deserves enormous credit for bringing inflation down. I think that monetary policy is critically important. So, for example, raising interest rates. We had a soft landing after massive inflation that occurred, and I think the Federal Reserve deserves a lot of credit under Biden. I'm glad that Biden didn't, for example, pressure the Federal Reserve to lower interest rates, which he's doing right now. He's pressuring the Federal Reserve to lower interest rates, which is going to obviously have an inflationary effect. I'm going to be frank with you guys. I think that some of Trump's policies may have inflationary effects in terms of the tariffs and potentially, right, but though I can't be proved right now, I'm telling you I can't be proved right now, if he's like worse on healthcare and worse on diseases, then the bird flu, if it's allowed to spread, that could also have an effect, on chickens and eggs and that kind of thing. But I think that by and large, we're in an inflationary period, largely as an outgrowth of COVID. I think that Trump will make things worse. I think it's that Biden's spending early on probably had a marginal effect on inflation, but not the degree that people claim it did. And he got so much blame for it when really America was better off with respect to prices and inflation than the rest of the country, and they had a soft landing, no recession. And so, yeah, that's my answer to that.
I should answer the question too, because he was asking both of us. So I don't blame Biden per se for the inflation. A lot of it was the production, stopped because of COVID, if we're being perfectly clear about that. However, I think it's the American Rescue Plan that he passed in March, I think did make it worse because it slowed down production even further when it was unnecessary. In March, again, we had the magical vaccine that was actually being rolled out. You could have opened things up, but instead we had a delay, an expansion of those $1,400 payments. I believe the COVID unemployment was also expanded, so you had less people returning to work, and you essentially extended the period of time where, of course, like we weren't producing stuff, and inflation is just too many dollars chasing too few goods. Obviously, everything was spent during the COVID period as well under the Trump administration. These were bipartisan bills, but it was a crap ton of spending in order to keep it afloat. So you could assign some blame for that money to Trump as well, like to Congress. And you could also assign some blame, in my opinion, to the Democratic governors who were locking down their economy, keeping people out of work on purpose in order to make things worse in the lead up to the election. So, and they were doing it for political reasons, not for science reasons.
Okay, but the Mayor Adams, that's not political. You know it's not political. Or is it political? Are you willing to say that's political?
Does that have anything to do with
Yes,
what
it
I
does.
just said?
Because you just said it was obviously political when people were
Yeah, when the teachers union is pushing to not have their teachers return to work in like 2022, like the Chicago teachers union was.
You're saying that's obviously political. It's not related to health or
That's a
safety.
political reason, and
Okay,
we're pretending
so
it's
I'm
due to
asking you,
safety,
given
even
that-
though we knew from the science from Scandinavia that you could send kids to school. We knew from Florida, and DeSantis was attacked mercilessly over this, that you could send kids back to school. Yes, 100%
So to
it
be
was
clear,
political.
you're willing to
The
say
locking down
you're
and
willing to say that's
extension-
obviously political, right? So
Yes,
that-
the politicians
Yeah.
acting as politicians is political.
So you said the union, fair?
The teachers union and the Democrats that operated on behalf.
Okay,
of them.
so that's obviously political, but the Mayor Adams quid pro quo and declination is
You're
not willing to say that's
I
political.
haven't seen there's allegations of a quid pro quo. If it comes out that that's occurred, then
Okay.
yeah, it's political.
Would that be impeachable?
Would it be impeachable? I don't know. Anything's impeachable.
Wait, if it was a political deal,
anything is literally anything.
No,
is
would
impeachable.
you support an impeachment based on, hey, we're not going to prosecute you if you agree to do immigration policy according to our whims? Would you say that Trump should be removed for that?
I would remove the head of the Department of Justice for that.
Okay,
Because
that's
they
a start.
issued the memo. Pam Bondi, you're gone. Matt Gaetz, you're
Wait,
coming
but-
back.
but is that a joke, or would you?
No, I would. I think it was the second in command technically, but whatever.
By the way, we all know this is
buck
Trump.
stops.
We know this is Trump. I mean, it's
Allegedly.
such a joke to say that it's not Trump. I mean, Trump is literally bringing Mayor Adams into Mar-a-Lago. It's clear that it's Trump.
I mean, Mayor Eric Adams is going to Mar-a-Lago.
Mayor Adams is from Mar-a-Lago, and
No,
therefore,
he was going there. He's not from there.
Oh, that's what I heard. My bad. How you doing, man?
How you doing? The question's towards you.
Okay.
So you mentioned like Doge not having like legal access to a lot of these companies, right? A lot of these agencies, right?
I think it's not known whether or not they have legal access to do everything that they've been doing.
Okay, so based off that, I just want to tell you that a federal judge has what's called allowed access to them having to at least 3 agencies.
Yeah. So
Yes.
To be clear, so there are fighting TROs and injunctions right now. I'm aware of some of them. So, for example, there's a Treasury access one where Doge has been stopped from accessing certain Treasury records. Some have been released, I know, recently. So I'm not saying that it's a foregone conclusion that everything that Doge is doing is illegal. What I do think is illegal and unconstitutional is usurping Congress's authority under Article 1 to appropriate funds. And that's undoubtedly what's going on with respect to the spending freeze at a bare minimum and their proportion to delete agencies. They're saying they're doing it, and they're trying to fire everyone at USAID. I mean, they're literally trying to fire like 99% of the staff. And it can't be the case that the president can just decide on a day to end an agency that's been enacted by Congress and do it even in a cute way where he's like, I'm just going to fire everyone, close the offices, and say it's deleted, but it's not officially deleted. That can't be allowed.
And to
Because
like
it's not in keeping with the constitutional design. There was a separation of powers for a reason to protect, like as Antonin Scalia said, your rights don't mean shit if there's not a separation of powers. What protects your rights, your right to gun ownership, your right to your First Amendment, is to prevent the centralization of authority. That's what the framers talked about. That's why there's this federalism system where you have different states. That's why there's a bicameral Congress. It's to protect the separation of powers. And when you say, yeah, I think it's based because I don't agree with trans programs, and so I think that Elon should just be able to delete it and nuke it at a whim without following the law, you're saying you want a king, and you don't care about the procedures or law or foundation or history of the country.
yeah, and oh yeah, if you have a follow-up, go ahead. Sorry.
I just like to say end the Fed. Yeah.
And the Fed.
But he's the lawyer, so he can confirm this if I have it backwards. But like, just so you guys know, when you see stuff about temporary restraining orders, that's like a first step where I don't even think they have the opposition there. So it's temporary restraining orders, then preliminary injunctions, and then they're actually going to hear the case. So like any of these, like one judge ruling this or that, as of right now, we're in the very early stages of this being fought out in the courts. Also, quick clarification: Biden pardoned like his whole family, not just his son.
Yeah, it's correct.
I don't know how I forgot
By the way,
that.
I just want to be clear.
Like-
I've said on the record that Biden preemptively be pardoning his family, which there's no evidence of any crimes by sans Hunter. Hunter, there's sufficiently evidence for crimes. But the other ones where he pardoned on like the last day, there's no evidence of their crimes. I have said on the record that that's impeachable. I have said that. You won't say that it would be impeachable for the Trump administration to have this corrupt dealing with Mayor Adams. Oh, you don't think it's impeachable for him?
He pardoned them on his last day. I guess you could impeach him after the fact.
Well, what I'm trying to say is I think that I have standards, and I've tried to hold Biden to them honestly. And I've said when I think things are corrupt, when he's done illegal things. For example, when he did the border pause, he closed the border purportedly on his own initiative. I thought that was a very weak move. I thought it was one of his worst moments where he's breaking the law. And he said for the longest time, I need Congress in order to act because that would be illegal to do otherwise. And then he changed his mind. I thought that was a horrible moment for him. I thought it was against the law. I'm willing to call him out and say that that's bad, that's corrupt. I'm willing to say that his impeachments are corrupt. You're not willing to say on the record.
To be clear, the Biden pardons, you could say they're corrupt, but I don't think they're impeachable. He does have the pardon power. Like, we vested that in the president.
But guys, come on. The Richard Nixon stuff, I started with that for a reason. So Nixon, obviously, you agree, right? Nixon has the power to fire the attorney general.
Yeah.
They were going to impeach him over that.
Okay.
Right? So
impeachment is a political process.
Well,
I just don't think you should impeach somebody over pardon.
So you don't think that Richard Nixon should have been impeached and removed?
He wasn't impeached.
No, I'm asking, do you think he should have been?
Honestly, like, by today's standards, probably not. He was like super, like,
Yikes.
Ready.
So AJW, you kind of skirted past the ethical implications for this. So with bilateral laws between the U.S. and other countries, they're pretty important. Example, if you have an individual from Peru fleeing Peru due to physical threats of their life, if they come to the U.S. and we eventually deport them, where do we ship them to? If we ship them back to Peru, we're basically throwing them back to the wolves. But if we don't have bilateral agreements with other countries, we can't just drop them off in like Colombia. What do we do at that point?
So again, the reason I was avoiding that at the time is because he was not answering the question about whether or not the person who's leaving should apply in the next safe country over. So that was the issue. Obviously, like, these agreements are important, and I don't support sending people back to like dangerous zones. That's why when he was asking me if I would violate the law to send them back, I said no.
It was
the
pulling
law,
teeth.
The
It was
law
pulling
should be
teeth.
changed. Well, because again, we were talking about two different things, and like, you like to do this thing where you ask the same question over and over and over again as a method to grandstand to obfuscate the fact that you had like no points in defense of Joe Biden. But you know, that's neither
just
here nor
talked
there.
about it for like 5 minutes.
Like, you know, but anyway, so yeah, these bilateral agreements are obviously important, and I know there was an issue with sending people back to Venezuela, and then we would have to find a third-party country in order to send them to. So yeah, obviously they're important in that regard. Like, I didn't mean to, like, I guess misstate that or give that impression.
So currently, if that situation would happen right now and we didn't have those bilateral agreements, would you ship them back?
No, I wouldn't ship them back. It's in violation of the law. And again, if you're like legitimately like fearing asylum, like, I'm not, you know, I'm more upset about the fraud in our asylum system. And if we could change them to the next country over, I would be in favor of that.
Hi, guys. Sort of a question for both of you, and not much of a question, but I read... Excuse me? Oh, excuse me, guys. Sorry. Not much of a question, but I would like to... Two things I read on Twitter this morning before I got here. The first thing was that Taiwan Semiconductor is in negotiations with Intel, and that Biden had spent something like $280 million to try to do this, only it's happening now because of the threat of tariffs. I don't know if that's true or not. I'm wondering what both of you think of that. The second thing is this. I believe there was a change in wording for something with the State Department or something that supports the independence of Taiwan, whereas before, under the Biden administration, that wasn't the case. Do either of you know any about that? Now, remember, I just scrolled these on Twitter. I can't say they're true or false.
Can I answer first?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I know this is going to sound not very America first, so like, kill me over it if you will. I'm actually not big on luring the semiconductor of these like high-end chips from Taiwan to the U.S. One, it's going to take years in order to do it, but also what you call it? Like, this is like what's called like Taiwan's like silicon shield, and essentially what protects them from being invaded, and like they are an ally of us, is that nobody produces these level of chips. So us pulling that away, like, and I know Trump is like wants to tariff his way to that. I know they passed the CHIP Acts before, and I know after COVID, some of these companies wanted to move some of their manufacturing here. I actually think it's disastrous for Taiwan because that's like a free way to keep them defended, because even the Chinese rely on the chips from them, and it's not like this like level of production and intellect can be recreated. I totally spazzed on your second point.
It was about the wording in the State Department thing. I think it's a red herring. I'm not 100% read in, but from what I saw, they were just stating America's position, which is long-standing, that China considers their
Flights, maps, things like that.
Oh,
You're not allowed to call Taiwan, Taiwan.
We have a policy of like strategic ambiguity, so we like pretend in certain cases that there's one, but we agree with the one China policy, but in other cases we say that we don't, or that, you know, we want them to not know exactly what we're going to do. So like I don't
I'm not sure
I
there's
don't
been
know
a
if that's
change.
real,
Yeah.
that change, but if it is, it does like flout the ambiguity. And if there's no justification for changing that, I'm not on board with it.
In general, I'm concerned about Chinese encroachment in domestically, but also like I do think they try to interfere in our elections. I do think that they are trying to get closer to a lot of developing countries that America should take an interest in for their own national. Yeah.
That was, I mean, that happened in the view of the entire global community. They absolutely lied about Hong Kong.
China, right? I think that China are liars. I don't like them in the sense of geostrategically.
Trump on this subject, who's the better person?
Yeah, so I think that Biden has shown a willingness to stand by Taiwan. Biden increased the amount of tariffs. I think that some tariffs on China were a good idea by Trump. I'm not saying that everything Trump does is bad. And Biden increased some of those tariffs. And so for me, the concern about China influence is a lot of the Elon Musk stuff, because I know Elon Musk has a lot of investments in China. And I know that the TikTok situation, right? TikTok, the ban, you might have your own opinion on that, but the Supreme Court ruled 9-0 that it was constitutional. I happen to agree with that opinion. I don't know that I agree with the policy. I haven't really thought about that or haven't come to that determination yet. But Trump is illegally, in my opinion, extending the allowable time for that TikTok ban or divestment to stay in place. And so I think that there's a lot of concern there, especially when he changed his stance on TikTok after he was like charmed by the TikTok investors or some TikTok investors. And so I don't know that there's been an official change in stance. I don't know if that's true, but I am concerned about financial robber baron interests that are aligned with China and are maybe having the potential to change policy.
Listen, I watched the congressional hearing with that TikTok CEO, and one thing that he emphasized time and time again is that he's from Singapore.
No, the investor, the investor.
That's the guy who
yeah, not the CEO. But yes, it was funny.
So you brought up the quote or the tweet from Donald Trump recently.
Yeah.
He who saves his country does not violate any law. Everyone knows that is attributed to Napoleon from right before he declared himself emperor. I mean, I don't know how else to interpret what he's saying here other than how you explained it. How do you interpret this?
I mean, Trump says a lot of things. It's just, it is what it is.
Does it concern you?
I figured you'd say that too.
Does it concern me? I don't know. Did he watch Napoleon, the recent movie that came out like 10 minutes before
but it's
tweeting
not just that.
If
Come
he
on,
did.
it's.
I mean, look, when pressed after all this talk about whether or not they're gonna like flout the court orders, when J.D. Vance was signaling against judges, Trump came out and like some people gave him credit for it, some people found reasons to attack him for it, and said that he always abides by the court decisions and like they're just gonna go through the appeal process. So yeah, Trump says things like, he tweets things or truths them on his new platform, which I will not join.
You're not concerned of executive overreach.
I feel like I've known him for like 10 years in terms of politics, and like these statements don't concern me. Actions concern me.
Okay.
And I haven't known him personally. I'm just saying he's been like the main
he's
feature of American politics.
He's had a track record of, at the bare minimum, this entire debate has not just been about January 6th. So I don't want to hear that complaint. I mean, he's done actions and taken steps that show that he doesn't really give a about the rule of law. Wouldn't you agree?
I mean, listen, he says a lot of stuff. He said that he was going to build a wall and Mexico was going to pay for it. And like, I mean, let's be real. That's not.
Yeah, and he said prices were going to fall on day one. So why?
I mean, that's a salesman move right there.
So it's okay, you're fine with him lying.
It's
yes.
Listen, prices are going to fall day one. I mean, that's metaphorical.
I'm sorry for it to be me again.
Yeah.
The one thing I'll note is that I've not heard a single right-leaning person make any statements about the price of things. They've made their statement about immigration. They've made their statement about energy independence. They've made their statement about law and order criminality. It's very popular with the left wing to bring that up, but it doesn't seem to be the motivation. I mean, what I see on Twitter is people saying, I don't care how expensive eggs are. I want a closed border. I want people deported. So, I mean, when you harp on the price thing, I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm just saying it's not important to people. Obviously, prices are important. What I'm saying is it's not the prime mover. It's not why they voted for him. They voted for him for many other reasons.
Well, first of all, I think a lot of people, they listed prices as one of their biggest issue.
It's important, of course.
Yeah, okay.
It's not the most important issue. It's the 10th most important
It was the most important issue of the election. Do you agree with that?
No, I think it was the 10th, 15th most important issue.
By polling or by your intuition?
Clearly not by polling. I'm saying by what the vibe I get.
The vibes, right. So I happen to...
No claim otherwise. I didn't say
Oh, yeah, fair. But what I'm suggesting is I happen to agree with you that they stopped caring about the MAGA. I think people still care about prices. I think that's like a fundamental. But the MAGA influencers, the MAGA elite, I call them, they show they don't care about prices. And I think that that's right. And it shows that they never cared about prices when they were telling you they cared about prices. That's what it shows you. It shows you the hypocrisy of the liars behind it, both Trump, Vance, and everyone else who was pushing that narrative the entire time that Biden was solely responsible for inflation, which not even Sean agrees with. And so, yeah, I think that it's indicative that what they care about is power, control, corruption, and they don't care about prices. And in fact, they'll say, we're going to sacrifice prices for the sake of corruption, for the sake of centralization of authority. And so, yeah, I agree. They don't care about it.
I mean, I would say, look, it's political, obviously. Like, the Democrats were downplaying price increases before the election. Now that Trump's in office, like, that has been moved off. But also very important, like, influencers online, on Twitter, on social media, that's not reality. Like, the people who did move the election, the people who, went from Trump to to Biden and then back to Trump in the election, like, they were voting on economic issues. Like, maybe some of them in certain pockets were moving on immigration issues. We've seen some movement in blue cities where people are experiencing the issues with immigration. But overall, like, the number one driver is the economy. And it's a famous quote from, like, the Clinton administration, it's the economy, stupid. So, like, just because, like, people have changed up their talking points, that doesn't mean that Americans don't care about those issues. And, like, the people who say, I don't care about the price of eggs, regular people care about the price of eggs. And, like, yeah, it's up.
They're telling me to buy chickens. They're saying go buy chicken.
I mean,
the price of eggs is
listen,
not the economy.
the
The economy is about an overall
people
long-term
in
system.
but that's like the economy is all of us engaging like in economic activity and how that relates, and it's a worldwide thing. But like, the way people interact with the economy, or the way people assess how they feel about the economy, is indicative in basic things like that. So you could say eggs aren't the economy, but the fact is, people see prices going up. That's a reason why they were so mad going into the election. And one of the basic things, even though, again, energy is a worldwide thing, and like there's broader like economic factors that play, who cares? But when people see gas pump price high, they get mad. Like they're
because we're not allowed to drill our own oil, things like that. What I'm suggesting is that the price of eggs isn't as important as the long-term positive effects it may have on the economy.
According to whom?
I mean, look, you can.
I'm asking you.
I happen to think that there's a lot of cherry picking of economic stuff that I think Sean, you're completely correct about, and that people will play politics with it. But I also think that political article you cited is stupid as hell. It's saying that these basic, like, the youth rate unemployment is misleading or something, but they didn't compare how the other factors or calculations of underemployment changed over time. And so those are examples of propaganda pieces that are run in, frankly, not too impressive, in my opinion, journals and articles, and like Politico. I don't respect them that much. And yeah, that's what happens. People play games with the numbers. They play games with the statistics. And they did it with egg prices under the Trump campaign. They made it a cornerstone of their pitch. Trump literally specifically talked about egg prices. Right. And so I'm not going to have it be heard that we're not going to apply that standard to Trump, that we're not going to hold him to his campaign promise because it's just a sales pitch, and that we're not going to talk about eggs when he talked about eggs. I think we can't have these double standards.
I mean, you could talk about eggs, but like, the reason we had a giant shock in the Biden administration in like 2022 was the bird flu. Bird flu's back in 2025.
And why did we have inflation in 2022?
No, I'm not talking about the bird flu in for specifically eggs.
And I'm talking about COVID under Biden and Trump. That's what caused inflation around the world. But you guys are willing to blame Biden for inflation, or not? Some people are willing to blame Biden for inflation, but you're willing and understanding of the bird flu, with respect to the price of eggs. And so I think there's
I'm saying eggs specifically. Like, obviously inflation overall, like, it's slowed. I think we're at 3%. The Federal Reserve wants it to be at 2%. But like, yeah, like, inflation, like, look, Trump's made a lot of promises, but I do think the American people right now in this moment are giving him a break on that, and that's represented in his approval ratings. I think he's at like 53%. So like, there's a period of time though where if prices remain high and gas remains up and eggs remain up, that Trump is going to go the same way that Biden goes if all those factors are unchanged.
And you'll call him an economic failure.
If incomes don't like start rising faster than the cost of living and all these other things, yeah.
And you'll call him an economic failure.
Yes, if you fail in economic metrics, then yes,
even if it's not his fault, even if there's like a calamitous pandemic of the bird flu that it gets even worse than COVID, let's say.
I mean, that's specifically with eggs, but or unless you're saying it's going to jump to people.
I think that your degree of fault over someone's policy should relate to their state of mind and the effect that policy has on the outcomes. And that's why I hate this kind of like analysis of the policies, who's better and worse, on like when the full invasion of Ukraine happened, or when Hamas invaded Israel and killed a bunch.
That wasn't my basis of it.
I'm making a broader point that like people will point to specific bad things that happened under Biden and blame him for it, but they don't apply that same standard to Trump. And I think that that's absurd.
You should blame him for things that
happened.
if he has policies that
The airplanes.
If he has policies that signal certain things and then that creates a negative outcome, then
How about, so let's talk about the airplane crashes. The airplane crashed. It happened under his watch. Do you blame him for it?
I mean, he was president for like 3 weeks.
Okay.
If he had anything to do with that, but their problems in the FAA predate the Trump administration,
So
the
that's
first
what,
Trump
that's
administration.
what I mean. You apply this analytical framework, which I think I respect.
I applied that framework to Biden.
I don't know that people do.
Who's people? Like, you're asking me.
99.999% of MAGA people, including you in most instances.
Including the Democrats who killed his presidential ambitions for a second term. Like good old Joe, they threw him under the bus.
Are you more concerned about that action, which, by the way, I want to be clear about this. Do you think that the Democratic Party should have thrown out all of the certified delegates in their primary contests?
No, I think they should have left the old man in his position and let him fight another day.
Hang on. So Biden withdrew, fair?
I mean, he withdrew under immense pressure, and I think it's very questionable, and I'm still waiting on those campaign
Are
books.
politicians not allowed to pressure other politicians for their own
I'm
interests?
waiting on those campaign
So
books
if
for the
Trump
coup
had done that, you would
against
say
Joe
it would be
Biden.
genius. I mean, Trump does this as a he does it to other Republicans all the time. He influences people, he pressures people, and so for you to act that it's so illegitimate for Democrats to pressure their own president, when you would consider
could
that
pressure
savviness.
him and have some kind of process in order to some kind of
There- but
actual
there-
democratic process.
But the
in order
Democratic
to choose
process,
the nominee.
Democratic process were the primary contests,
And Biden won it. He crushed it. He
Right,
killed
so-
it.
so-
They were like,
so
"That's my
once-
guy. Let's run him
once
again."
those
But you turned your back on him,
No.
and now that Kamala Harris has lost and been cast aside to the dustbin of history, all of a sudden you're like, Joe's not so bad. I'm going to defend his record on
First of
stage.
all,
You didn't
you're
want
not
him.
no.
You betrayed him. You're out of order.
So just to be clear, Joe Biden, in his recent months, it's not the case that I've been having this rosy feeling of Joe Biden. I felt worse about Joe Biden because Joe Biden broke his most important promise, which is to restore the soul of the country, which he failed by ushering in this tyrant who you're going to see. And keep an eye on what's going on in the courts and how he's listening to these injunctions and the TROs. I'm telling you now, he's going to defy the courts. He's already defying Congress's explicit desires, and there's going to be a standoff. And mark my words, when it happens, you can all come back to me and say you were right, but I know you won't because some of you will be
agrees
appalled.
with him. What do you mean?
Congress agrees with him?
How does he define the Congress? You're talking about the last Congress and the last appropriation.
Does he not have to follow the will?
But he's not
of the
defying the
Congress?
Congress. We're going to see in the legislative process what is actually going to be implemented in terms of Congress's domain.
The previous appropriations were defied
Yeah, and some of them they were paused. Yeah,
illegally.
I don't know about
You're not sure about that.
I don't know about that.
If they were, and Trump continues freezing,
We
which
got to fight it out in the courts. And Trump said he'll abide by the courts, so we'll see.
is that what you would say if Joe Biden came after your guns?
Joe Biden coming after. Well, I don't have any guns. I live in New York. They already took them from me.
So what would happen? Okay, go ahead. Sorry,
I'm also
James.
a felon. I'm not allowed near a school.
This is technically the time that,
Yeah.
given that folks might have to get up for work tomorrow.
Kidding about that.
I hate ending this because it has been, in my opinion, the best debate of the conference. I have enjoyed this so much. But like I said, I don't want to keep people past time, and some of them may have to get up for work in the morning. So I
Wait,
do
are
want
we
to-
are we closing?
If you guys would like closing statements,
I would love it, yeah.
Let's
Go
do
ahead,
that, okay?
sir.
Yeah.
You bet.
Thank you. First of all, thank you, Sean, for doing this. I get very fiery in my Twitter and with Sean because I really love the country. And my parents were immigrants, but I was born in the United States. And I'm a lawyer. I love the Constitution. And I want to tell you that when you see my passion, when you see me upset about something, it's real. I'm not lying to you. And you might think I'm deluded, but I think that there's a significant threat from this presidency. And I could even grant, I don't, but I could even grant all of the specific policy points that we've had. I could grant that Trump is better on the economy. I could grant that Trump is better on immigration, that he's better on foreign policy. I could grant that he's better on Israel, Gaza. I don't, to be clear. But even if I did, it would pale in comparison to the Project 2025 policy of centralization of executive authority. That is the death knell for republics. We don't want to turn this country into Hungary. Please don't. And all the signs are there. He is obviously implementing spending and hiring freezes for the purpose of politicizing the bureaucracies. Not, yes, it's true that bureaucracies sometimes can have capture, that there can be problems with it, but he's explicitly going out of his way to politicize them, to make sure that everyone is beholden to him. Everything is like that. The same thing, by the way, with the reinstitution of Schedule F, the desire to get rid of all these internal IGs. Why is he getting rid of the IGs? Because they would be checks on his own authority. Why is he getting rid of people that Elon Musk is investigating? Because they're investigating them and they don't want people to be internal checks. Why is he getting rid of the Office of the Special Counsel, which right now is in litigation? And there was recent circuit opinion about it. Because he doesn't want an Office of the Special Counsel because they root out corruption. All of these actions show you that what he's trying to do is centralize authority. And he's attacking both branches of government with his surrogates, like Charlie Kirk and others, Tim Pool, who say, defy the courts. They're brazen about it, right? They're saying it. They're gearing up for it. We already have a court ruling from federal court in Rhode Island, which said that he violated the plain text of the order, that he had notice of it, that there was no reason to violate it. And he's going to do it again. And obviously going after Congress with attacking the agencies and defunding it. You might think it's based to get rid of USAID. I might even agree with you on some of these line items that they're stupid. But the process matters. We're a government of laws, not of men. And what Trump is trying to change our system into is disgraceful and despicable. It's not in keeping with what we're doing. So don't fall for the swan song of authoritarianism just because you want to own the libs like me, all right? Because that will only go so far. My tears will only taste so good until the next day you realize your government is just an open factory for bribes, an open factory for the most brazen types of corruption, like we saw with Mayor Adams. I opened with that for a reason, because it's in your face. They're going on Fox and they're saying it's for politics, it's for immigration. What more could they do to signal to you we're in danger? This is a crisis, and that's why that's the most important policy. But I am willing to debate on all the others.
All right, cool. All right, I mean, I'm happy to be here. I hope this was the experience that you were asking for.
Yeah.
He sent me a very lovely tweet. He said it was going to be the honor of his life. Yeah. It makes me feel a little bad to read you how this was pitched to me, because James said, I got you a lefty named Pisco. He's one of Destiny's orbiters.
Oh, God.
Come on. Which is just rude,
Revealing DMs.
It's just rude, James. I knew who he was.
He knows me. We've
the man
before.
has some pride. Like, pitch him on his own merits. That being said, I did have a fun time here, all joking aside. As for the expansion of potential authoritarianism under the Trump administration, I'm against it. I think you should follow the courts. It seems like Trump himself, despite what Charlie Kirk or Tim Pool or any of these media personalities are saying he should do, is on board for that. I mean, he was asked directly about it. He answered it, but he is Trump. He says things. As for the order that he brought up, the OMB order, we already talked about that. The Trump administration said that they had another executive order that they didn't think that was bound to, so that's just an honest mistake. Everybody gets one, in my opinion. And look, I am concerned about the expansion of executive power where illegitimate. It has been the project of many a presidents in our nation's history to expand the power of the presidency. I mean, FDR was notorious for this. This happens repeatedly throughout our country's history. And it's just not something, and FDR not only did that, but he expanded the power of the federal government, and it is something to be concerned about. And to the extent that those concerns are real, I wish you, I hope that your feelings get alleviated by that. And I think the effects of the Trump administration will show that. I mean, he seems to want to get rid of power that is centralized in the federal government. We talk about the unelected bureaucrat that is Elon Musk. All of these departments are filled with unelected bureaucrats that are making policy. For every law that the Congress passes, they do something like 18 regulations. And I don't know what your position was on the Chevron deference case right there, but that was to go after the heart of the way that the executive legislates. This power has already been usurped, and we're trying to work our way, and we have to do it through Congress, to where everything goes back to where it's appropriate. And yes, testing the limits of like this 30-day before you could fire this official under you and all that is a part of the process of claiming legitimate power for the executive while also restoring that power back to the legislature. But again, I will emphasize the reason I definitely 100%, 10,000% won this man spent barely any time defending Joe Biden. All he did was orange man bad. And if you can't defend the affirmative on your position, then I say you're out of order, and this is done. Thank you, everybody, and have a good night.
Thank you very much. Thank you for that closing as well, Sean.
I made the rules for this.